Chapter 1528. In the Hall of Tranquility. In the spacious yard, more than 40 guards and maids were lined up in neat rows, looking solemn and dignified. They were all elites selected from the honor guard, qualified to accompany Lu Li to the temple to worship the immortal Lord. In addition, Jiang Ningxue and several geniuses of the Thousand Snow Empire were standing in front of the team. Everyone stood in the yard, waiting quietly. Lu Li was not present. At the moment, he was leading Chief Steward Fong to the yard where Ji Tianxing lived. Arriving at the yard, Lu Li stood under the ancient pine in the yard and waited. Chief Steward Fong walked to Ji Tianxing's room and shouted respectfully, "Young Master Ji, the time is up. You should go to the temple with the Crown Prince." The door was still closed. Ji Tianxing's voice came from inside. "Crown Prince Lu is going to worship the immortal Lord. As a sinner, I will not join the fun in case there is another disturbance." Hearing this, both Chief Steward Fong and Lu Li frowned. Lu Li waved his hand to signal Chief Steward Fong to leave. He said in person, "Young Master Ji, what do you mean? Didn't we agree on this before? Now that the time is up, you don't want to go. Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose?" As soon as he finished speaking, the door creaked open. Ji Tianxing stepped out and looked at Lu Li with a playful smile. He explained, "Crown Prince Lu, you have misunderstood. Since I have promised you, I will not go back on my words. I am just reminding Crown Prince Lu that it is best to think carefully before you make a decision, in case there's another accident." He and Lu Li both knew that today's matter would attract the attention and discussion of the geniuses of the 6 states. It was inevitable that something would go wrong. Lu Li was stunned. He smiled and said, "As long as young Master Ji is sincere in repentance, what accident can happen? Also, since I dared to invite young Master Ji to worship in the temple, I have thought it through." Sincere in repentance? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Others might not know, but he knew very well that he did not do anything wrong. Why should he go to the temple to repent? He had never done anything wrong. So how could he repent and turn over a new leaf? The reason why he agreed to go to the temple with Lu Li to worship the immortal master was that he had other intentions. Ever since the great changes in the world and the incident of the divine thunder, he had been harboring many doubts in his heart. He pondered for a long time, but he still couldn't figure it out. Why did the scene of Qin Shin and martial god Taihao sparring appear in his soul when he entered the temple and saw the statue of divine Lord Taihao? Why did the great guardian tie him to the stone pillar and whip him? Why did the entire mount of gods shake and even thunder strike him? Was it because of the sword of burial of heaven? Or because he looked like Qin Shin? Or was it because of the Qin Shin tomb in his body? He had always wanted to figure out the relationship between him and the Qin Shin. He wanted to go to the temple again to see if there would be another great change in the world. Would the statue of divine Lord Taihao be worthy of his worship? With so many questions in mind, Ji Tianxing followed Lu Li out of the yard and into the front yard. Lu Li was at the front of the group, followed by Ji Tianxing, Jiang Ningxue, and Chief Steward Fong. Behind them were the maids and guards. They walked out of the Hall of Tranquility in a formidable array and walked toward the temple under the tower of clear heaven. The sun had just risen. The faint golden sunlight shone on the peak of the Mount of Gods, illuminating all the buildings. The sea of clouds around the peak was also suffused with a golden glow. It was an auspicious sight. For Lu Li, this was a good omen, which made him feel relaxed and happy. Soon, they arrived at the plaza outside the temple. This spacious plaza was destroyed by the great changes in the world and the divine thunder, turning into a pile of ruins. Later, the powerful warriors and craftsmen of the Tower of Clear Heaven restored the plaza to its original state in just one day. At the moment, more than 100 young talents of the 6 states were gathered in the plaza. Seeing Lu Li and the others walking over, many of them looked up and sized up Lu Li, Ji Tianxing, and the others with mixed feelings. Most people's gazes were focused on Ji Tianxing. They wanted to see what this guy looked like after all the troubles he had caused. The geniuses of the Outcloud Empire also stared at Ji Tianxing with disdain and anger. They whispered to each other. Lu Li ignored the onlookers. He led the group through the plaza and was about to enter the temple. The chief guardian and the 6 messengers had been waiting in the temple for a long time. As soon as he arrived, the ceremony could be held and the worship could begin. However, when the team was about to cross the plaza, more than a dozen young geniuses stood in front of the team, blocking their way. These young geniuses were all from the Outcloud Empire. Their leaders were Lan Yiqing and Quanglong Lu Li stopped at once. He frowned and asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing?" As the representative of the Outcloud Empire, Lan Yiqing stepped forward, cupped his fist to Lu Li, and explained, "Prince Lu, we do not mean to offend you, and we will not stop you from worshipping the Immortal Lord. However, there is a shameless traitor in the Outcloud Empire who has disgraced our nation. As citizens of the Outcloud Empire, we cannot sit by and do nothing. We must stop this traitor and make him give a reasonable explanation." Lan Yiqing's cold words spread throughout the square. The scene instantly quieted down, and the atmosphere became somewhat heavy and tense. The young talent from the other states quickly retreated to the sides of the plaza, waiting to see a good show. They all knew that the traitor Lan Yiqing mentioned was Ji Tianxing. The geniuses of the Outcloud Empire were going to make things difficult for Ji Tianxing. Everyone was looking at Ji Tianxing with interest, waiting to see how he would explain and how he could resolve the situation. Lu Li was trying his best to win over Ji Tianxing to sow discord between Ji Tianxing and the Outcloud Empire. The news that the geniuses of other states learned was released by Lu Li on purpose. Now, Lan Yiqing and the others showed up to stop Lu Li, which was within Lu Li's expectation. Lu Li thought to himself, "The plan is going well. Everything is going according to my plan. Now that the Outcloud Empire is making things difficult in public, it is a good chance for me to win over Ji Tianxing." On this thought, Lu Li looked at Lan Yiqing coldly and sneered, "Ha ha, Lady Lan, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. People around me are my friends and citizens of the Thousand Snow Empire. How can I be a traitor?" Lan Yiqing didn't argue with him. She stared at Ji Tianxing coldly and shouted with contempt, "Ji Tianxing, you have the guts to betray the Outcloud Empire, but you don't have the guts to admit it?" Chapter 1529. Lan Yiqing's attitude was tough, and her words were harsh. She was smart enough to not argue with Lu Li. That would be a waste of time. She directly called out Ji Tianxing. She would not offend Lu Li too much, and at the same time, she could put Ji Tianxing in a passive and awkward situation. As long as Ji Tianxing still had his dignity and character, he would not turn a deaf ear to it. He would step forward bravely. Young talents from different countries were looking at Lan Yiqing with new eyes. They had different opinions about her. This girl is so scheming. Ji Tianxing is going to be embarrassed. This Lan Yiqing is calm and wise. Her means are sharp. She has pointed out the core of the problem. No wonder after Ji Tianxing was punished, she has become the role model of the Chu Yun Empire. We cannot underestimate this girl. We must be careful of her in the future. Lan Yiqing couldn't help but sneer when she saw that people were whispering and pointing at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, Ji Tianxing, do you think you can turn over a new leaf just because you have Lu Li as your backer? Don't even think about it. I will not let you go to the temple to repent and turn over a new leaf. If you take this chance to please the chief guardian and avoid punishment, you will become my stumbling block in the future." Beside her, Quanglong and the more than a dozen young talents sneered as well. They looked at Ji Tianxing with contempt. For a moment, Ji Tianxing became the focus of attention. He was pushed to the teeth of the storm. But he had expected that Lan Yiqing and the others would stir up trouble, so he was prepared. He walked out of the crowd calmly and stood in front of Lan Yiqing with a sneer of disdain. "I don't belong to any force. How can I betray you? You should keep the word traitor to yourself." Lan Yiqing and Quanglong's expressions changed. They frowned, and the contempt on their faces grew. "What a shameless guy." Lan Yiqing scolded coldly. "Ji Tianxing, don't forget that you are the #1 genius of the Chu Yun Empire. Now, you've sided with the crown prince of the Thousand Snow Empire. If this isn't betrayal, then what is?" Ji Tianxing also frowned and said contemptuously, "Lan Yiqing, are you deaf? Or are you out of your mind? I've already made myself clear. Do you still not understand? Although I came to the vast heaven pagoda with the identity of the Outcloud Empire's #1 genius, I'm not a member of the Outcloud Empire. Who I want to be with is my personal matter. What does it have to do with you? Yi Qingtang thought. Who the hell are you? Are you qualified to tell me what to do? The cold and majestic voice spread throughout the entire square. The geniuses for various countries were all shocked as they looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. No one would have thought that he would say such arrogant words, and even scold Lan Yiqing so badly. Lan Yiqing was so angry that she glared at him. She pointed at him and said "you" 3 times, but could not find a word to refute. Kuang Long and the other young geniuses were also furious. They looked at Ji Tianxing as if they were going to spit fire. However, like Lan Yiqing, they had seen Ji Tianxing participate in the ranking battle with their own eyes. At that time, Ji Tianxing's style of dress was completely different from the people of the Chu Yun Empire. Even his speech and accent were very awkward. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing was indeed not a member of the Chu Yun Empire. However, Lan Yiqing was furious. She had not achieved her goal, so how could she back down? She pointed at Ji Tianxing and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianxing, if it weren't for the special care of Saint Emperor Chu Yun, how could you become the #1 genius of the Chu Yun Empire? Now that you want to join the Qinshu Empire, how could you say such heartless words? Saint Emperor Chu Yun will not let you go." Kuang Long and the other young geniuses nodded in agreement while cursing furiously. Ji Tianxing stared at Lan Yiqing coldly and scolded contemptuously. "I became the #1 genius of the Chu Yun Empire because of my strength. I used my real strength to defeat all of you trash, not because of anyone's special care. As for whether the great Emperor Chu Yun will let me go, what does that have to do with you? Who do you think you are to represent the great Emperor Chu Yun? I'm warning you one last time, don't tell me what to do. Take your claws away, or I don't mind crippling them." Such arrogant words made Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the other geniuses turn pale and tremble. He dared to say such arrogant words in front of the geniuses of the 6 countries. He was too arrogant. However, his aura was majestic, and his entire body emitted an incomparably domineering aura. Every word he spoke was like muffled thunder that fiercely shook the hearts of everyone present. Lan Yiqing was shocked and angry. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. His face was livid. "Ji Tianxing, you will definitely pay for what you've said today." She glared at Ji Tianxing with a face full of hatred. After leaving behind some harsh words, she turned around and left. She wanted to use today's opportunity to humiliate Ji Tianxing in public and stop him from going to the temple. She didn't expect things to turn out this way. Not only did her plan fail, but she was also scolded by Ji Tianxing in public. She was humiliated. The more she thought about it, the more ashamed she became. She was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Kuang Long and the other young geniuses quickly surrounded her and retreated to the edge of the square to comfort her. However, there was still one person standing in front of Lu Li and Ji Tianxing. He was in a white robe. Even though he was a man, he was as beautiful as a woman. His temperament was feminine and charming. Without a doubt, he was Yin Wu Kei. Although he was also in the crowd just now, he didn't say anything from the beginning to the end, nor did he slander Ji Tianxing. At the moment, he was looking at Ji Tianxing with mixed feelings. He secretly sent a message. "Young Master Ji, I didn't expect that things would turn out this way. No matter what, I must remind you that Lu Li is a cunning and scheming man. He will do anything to achieve his goals. Even if you are in trouble, you should not follow him. He is not a wise leader." Ji Tianxing also looked at him with a deep gaze, sending him a message. "Thank you for your concern and reminder. I have my reasons and plans for doing this. Also, I don't belong to any force, and I will not submit to anyone. Even if the Holy Emperor of Thousand Snow was here, he could not make me submit to him, let alone Lu Li." Hearing Lu Li's words, the worry in Yin Wu Kei's eyes disappeared. He nodded slightly to Ji Tianxing and transmitted his voice to him. "I didn't misjudge you. You are still arrogant and proud as always. However, I was born in the Chuyin Empire. My family and friends are all in the Chuyin Empire. Therefore, I'm unable to stand up and support you. Please forgive me. Chapter 1530. In Wu Kei's eyes were clear as he stared at him. His lips curled into a smile. He and Ji Tianxing looked at each other for a while before In Wuk turned around and went back to the crowd. The disturbance caused by Lan Yiqing and the others was resolved by Ji Tianxing. His confidence and dominance left a deep impression on the talents from different countries. Once again, In Wuk had become the focus of discussion. Lu Li looked at Ji Tianxing and then at Lan Yiqing and the others at the edge of the plaza. A glint of disappointment and disdain rose in his eyes. He had thought that Lan Yiqing and the others could embarrass Ji Tianxing and put him in a humiliating position. By then, Lu Li would step in to solve the dispute and help Ji Tianxing out of the crisis. Lu Li was sure that he would be appreciated by Ji Tianxing. Little did he expect that Ji Tianxing could solve the problem with only a few words. He even made Lan Yiqing spit out blood and almost went on a rampage. Lu Li's plan had failed. He couldn't help but curse. I am so disappointed in the Chuyin Empire. Of course, Lu Li had to act as if nothing had happened. He led the others through the plaza and into the temple. At the gate of the temple, the more than 40 maids and escorts stayed outside and knelt in the corridor with respect. As servants, it was already a great honor for them to be able to come to the temple. They were not qualified to enter the hall. Only Ji Tianxing, Jiang Ningxue, and several talents from the Empire of Thousand Snow followed Lu Li into the hall. In the splendid hall, Chief Guardian stood in front of the statue of the immortal. The 6 messengers stood on both sides of the statue. Just like the previous ones, this worship ceremony was hosted by Chief Guardian. He held a book of laws in his hands and stood in front of the statue solemnly. He looked at Lu Li and the others with dignity. Lu Li led Ji Tianxing and the others to the center of the hall and bowed to the Chief Guardian and the messengers. Greetings, Chief Guardian and messengers. Ji Tianxing didn't react. He didn't bow or say anything. He looked at the wall behind the Divine Master statue, observing the murals and symbols. Meanwhile, he could not help but recall some scenes related to martial god Taihao deep in his mind. Those were Qin Shin's memories, but they were scattered and fragmented. Fortunately, he didn't lose focus. His eyes were still clear and calm. Seeing that he did not bow, the great guardian was a little displeased, and his eyes turned cold. However, he suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and ignored Ji Tianxing. In his mind, Ji Tianxing's disrespect towards him was nothing, but disrespect towards Divine Lord Taihao was a heinous crime. He held the codex in his hands and announced in a solemn tone, I declare that the worship ceremony will now begin. Then, with a solemn tone, he began to recite the profound and obscure divine scriptures. His right hand slowly waved as he performed a mysterious seal. Everything is born without a beginning. There is a beginning and there is an end. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is thought. As the solemn voice of the Chief Guardian echoed in the hall, Lu Li dropped to his knees with respect and kowtowed to the statue. His expression and posture were full of reverence and devotion. After 3 kowtows, he stood up, took 3 steps forward, and kowtowed 3 more times. Then he walked toward the Divine Master's statue, step by step, kneeling every 3 steps and kowtowing every 9 steps. It was truly 3 kneels and 9 kowtows. Jiang Ningxue and the other geniuses of the Empire of Thousand Snow did the same. They knelt and kowtowed to the Divine Master's statue with utmost devotion. Only Ji Tianxing remained standing in the middle of the hall. He neither knelt nor kowtowed. His dignity and pride made it impossible for him to kowtow to the Divine Master's statue like Lu Li and the others. He only bowed to the Divine Master's statue. This was the greatest sincerity he could show. The Chief Guardian was still reciting the divine scriptures when he saw Ji Tianxing standing out from the crowd. Lu Li, Jiang Ningxue, and the others were all on their knees, but he was the only one standing upright. He was too conspicuous. The Chief Protector immediately stopped chanting when he saw this. He furrowed his brows as anger surged through his eyes. He never expected that after what happened last time, Ji Tianxing would not learn his lesson. He even dared to offend the Divine Master's dignity. He gave Ji Tianxing a chance to turn over a new leaf for Lu Li's sake. He never expected that Ji Tianxing would still have such an attitude. How could he not be angry? Ji Tianxing, I have shown you mercy and given you a chance to come to the temple to worship and repent. How dare you not kneel? The chief guardian glared at Ji Tianxing and scolded him coldly. The messengers, Lu Li and the others, were all startled. They all turned to Ji Tianxing. Everyone stared at him with shocked and puzzled expressions. Nobody could understand why this guy refused to repent. The statue enshrined in the temple was the supreme martial god Tai Hao. Was this guy stupid? Why wouldn't he kneel and worship the Divine Master statue? If someone's attitude was pious, they might be able to gain the Divine Master's favor and receive the Divine Master's enlightenment and rewards. At this moment, a sudden cry of surprise broke the silence of the temple. Heavens! Everyone look! The Divine Master's statue is showing an oracle. Hearing this, everyone was taken aback. Their eyes were dazed, and they could not react in time. A moment later, everyone came to their senses and turned to look at the Divine Master's statue. The majestic and dignified Divine Master's statue lit up with a dazzling golden light. It was incomparably sacred. On the pedestal at the foot of the statue was a white jade slab, 2 meters wide and 10 meters long. It also lit up with a white light. This jade slab was part of the pedestal and was used for decoration and embellishment. At the same time, this jade slab was a piece of divine jade that could communicate with the Divine Master. It had a special function, which was to show the Divine Master's oracle. When a peerless expert or genius worshipped the Divine Master's statue, if they could gain the Divine Master's favor, the jade slab would light up and show different oracles. Some oracles were to enlighten believers. Some oracles were to give orders. For nearly 1,000 years, only a few people received oracles when they worshipped the Divine Master's statue. Those few people were the saint emperors of several large empires and the great protector of the past. Back then, the great protector was also a peerless genius of his generation. With his abyss body, his name shook the world. When he worshipped the Divine Master's statue, he gained the Divine Master's favor and triggered an oracle. Later, he was nurtured into a warrior saint expert and was highly regarded by the Divine Master. He was appointed as the great protector of the clear heaven pagoda. Now, the oracle had come again. The great protector, the 6 messengers, Lu Li, Jiang Ningxue, and the others all showed excited expressions. Lu Li, in particular, was so excited that his face was flushed. He hurriedly kowtowed 9 times to the Divine Master's statue and laughed excitedly. Chapter 1531. Everyone understood that a person that could trigger an oracle must have received the Master of God's favor and attention. Such a person would either be a powerful warrior like the 6 holy emperors or a peerless genius that could become a powerful warrior of the holy emperor level in the future. Today was the day that Lu Li paid homage to the Master of God. Not only was Lu Li devoted to the Master of God, but he was also a gifted warrior. Almost everyone was convinced that the oracle was given to Lu Li by the Master of God. The several messengers were looking at Lu Li with gratification and applauding him. This is great. Lu Li's devotion has moved the Master of God. For decades, we have seen with our own eyes that Lu Li would come back to pay homage to the Master of God every 2 years to thank the Master of God for his cultivation. He deserves it. When Lu Li was still an apprentice, we all thought highly of him and believed that he would achieve great things in the future. It seems that we are right. The Master of God has given us an oracle. This is his acknowledgement of Lu Li. Chief Guardian was so happy that he even forgot about Ji Tianxing's disrespect to the Master of God. Looking at Lu Li with glowing eyes, Chief Guardian exclaimed, "Lu Li, I have always seen your talent and your devotion to the Master of God, and I approve of it. Now, you have finally won the Master of God's favor, and the oracle is here. You have achieved something. I am happy for you, and I am proud of you." Lu Li had become the center of attention. Being praised by the chief guardian and several messengers, he was so excited that his heart was pounding. He had been waiting for this day for hundreds of years. In order to win the master of God's favor, he had done everything he could. Now, his wish had finally come true. He was so happy and excited that he almost jumped to his feet. That being said, he tried his best to suppress his excitement. He remained humble and courteous. He bowed to the chief guardian and the messengers and expressed his gratitude in a dignified manner. Jiang Ningxue and the other geniuses of the Empire of Thousand Snow were looking at Lu Li with admiration and admiration. For them, this was a dream that was out of their reach. They were excited and proud that Lu Li had been acknowledged by the Master of God. However, right when everyone was filled with excitement and revelry, a voice that was filled with bewilderment resounded once more in the hall. Why is the Divine Master's oracle a little strange? The hall instantly quieted down. Everyone stopped smiling and turned to look at Lin Dowie. He was the first one to notice the arrival of the oracle. Now it was him again. After carefully examining the oracle, he asked this question. Everyone looked at the jade slab at the base of the statue. On the white jade slab, there were 2 lines of golden words. When I first entered the conferred God's land, I was struck by lightning from the 9 heavens. When the day comes, I'll break the secrets of heaven with a single sword. The years passed without a trace. The affairs of the world reincarnated into another epic. Even now, I still think of the 9 heavens beyond, destroying the Milky Way and breaking space-time with my palm. Previously, when everyone saw the white light flickering on the jade board, they only knew that the Divine Lord's oracle had arrived. Because of this, they cheered and jumped for joy. No one carefully read the contents of the oracle. Now, they stared at the 2 lines of words. After reading it 2 or 3 times, they all frowned in confusion. Not only did the chief guardian and the 6 emissaries find it strange, but even Jiang Ningxue and the several geniuses of the Empire of Thousand Snow were suspicious. They secretly observed Lu Li's expression. Lu Li stared at the 2 lines of golden words. The excitement and ecstasy in his heart disappeared without a trace. He was filled with confusion, disappointment, and unwillingness. He pressed his lips together and said nothing. Anyone could see that the first sentence of the oracle excluded Lu Li from the list. When he first entered the conferred God's land, he was struck by lightning from the 9 heavens. This clearly meant that the one favored by the Divine Lord had just entered the Mount of Conferred Gods, and he had attracted lightning from the 9 heavens. When the day comes, I'll break the secrets of heaven with a single sword. This implied that the Divine Lord thought highly of this person. This person was talented and had unlimited potential. In the future, he would become a powerful warrior who could break the secrets of heaven with a single sword. As for the second paragraph, no one could understand it. For example, the words time of ages, reincarnation after reincarnation, beyond the 9 heavens, destroy galaxies, and break time and space were even more confusing. The Divine Lord's oracle was strange. No one knew who it was referring to. The chief guardian, the 6 emissaries, Lu Li and the others were all silent. They frowned and discussed in confusion. Ji Tianxing was the only one in the hall. After a moment of thought, he put on a smile. He put his hands behind his back and stared at the statue of the Divine Lord with glowing eyes. He murmured to himself, "It seems that the changes in heaven and earth and the thunderbolts were not coincidences. Marshal God Taihao has sensed my existence, and he thinks that I am Ken Shin. That is why he sent down this oracle. Time of ages left no trace. Reincarnation after reincarnation. Even now, he still thinks about beyond the 9 heavens, destroying galaxies and breaking time and space. Marshal God Taihao is talking about Kenshin, isn't he? Or perhaps he intentionally said these words in order to test if I'm the reincarnation of the Sword God." Thinking of this, he finally understood the reason for the disturbance. The smile on his face grew wider. The chief guardian and the 6 emissaries were discussing telepathically, trying to figure out the meaning of the oracle. Suddenly, he glanced at Ji Tianxing. Seeing Ji Tianxing's smiling face, The chief guardian frowned and shouted, "Ji Tianxing, what are you laughing at? This is a sacred temple. How dare you be disrespectful to the Divine Lord?" The cold and angry shout interrupted everyone's thoughts. Everyone's gazes gathered on Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing did not restrain himself. Instead, the smile on his face grew wider. He said in a playful tone, "I am laughing at someone who thinks he is infallible and misinterprets the Divine Lord's oracle. Making such a joke is disrespectful to the Divine Lord, isn't it?" The chief guardian was rendered speechless. His old face turned red, but he maintained his dignified look and shouted, "The Divine Lord's oracle is of course unfathomable and contains heaven's secrets. It is normal that mortals like us cannot understand it. How can it be a joke?" Ji Tianxing stared at him and said with a smile, "Everyone is cheering and celebrating before they can see the oracle clearly. What is this if not a joke?" The chief guardian and the emissaries blushed at the sarcasm. They were embarrassed and ashamed. Lu Li, Zhang Ningxue, and the others were so ashamed that they wished they could find a hole to hide in. Seeing that the chief guardian was speechless, Ji Tianxing continued, "Is the oracle really that hard to understand? I don't think so. Just entering the apotheosized land and being struck by lightning. Ha ha." He sneered and glanced at the chief guardian and the emissaries. Then, he turned around and walked out of the hall. Everyone looked at his back and suddenly thought of something. Their expressions changed drastically. Lin Dowie exclaimed in disbelief, "I understand now. The oracle is talking about Ji Tianxing." Chapter 1532. Even if Lin Dowie did not remind, the majority of the people present also guessed the answer. That Divine Master's oracle was absolutely not bestowed to Lu Li. It was talking about precisely Ji Tianxing. After all, there was a sentence in the oracle. "First enter God, sealing mountain. Be struck by divine lightning of the 9 heavens." Looking at the past 1,000 years, only Ji Tianxing alone could cause such a commotion. It was just that everyone subconsciously believed that Ji Tianxing had offended the Divine Master's majesty before. He was still a sinner right now. How could he possibly obtain the Divine Master's oracle? When the oracle descended, everyone's first reaction was Lu Li and would not consider Ji Tianxing at all. This was simply too preposterous. But the oracle still appeared clearly on the jade tablet. Who dared to question the Divine Master's oracle? The expressions of the chief protector and the few divine envoys all became very complicated. Before this, they did not take Ji Tianxing seriously and even somewhat loathed and hated him. In terms of strength, this guy could not rank in the top 5. In terms of talent, this guy was also very ordinary. Yet this guy was arrogant and conceited, triggering a huge change in heaven and earth, causing God-sealing mountain to tremble and nearly causing a catastrophe. If not for Jiao coming forward to protect him, the chief protector would have long expelled him from the vast heaven pagoda. But now, this guy just bowed to the Divine Master's statue and obtained the Divine Master's favor, even showing the oracle. This was simply too inconceivable, too dreamy. The few divine envoys stared at the oracle and were still whispering to each other, discussing the meaning of the oracle. But the chief protector frowned, all sorts of thoughts currently flashing through his mind. No wonder His Highness Jiao would protect Ji Tianxing. It must be that His Highness saw through this boy's extraordinariness long ago and will obtain the Divine Master's favor. Previously, this seat was still planning to find a chance to expel him from God's sealing mountain in the future to prevent him from wreaking havoc in the Holy Land again. But I didn't expect that he obtained the Divine Master's attention and favor. Looks like not only can this seat not expel him, but I also have to value and groom him even more, Sai. Thinking up to here, the chief protector sighed heavily in his heart, only feeling very vexed. Ji Tianxing was arrogant and did not put him in his eyes at all. However, he had to follow the Divine Lord's orders and try his best to cultivate Ji Tianxing. How could he not feel aggrieved? Lu Li's face was clouded with anger and shame. He secretly clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with intense anger. Originally, today was his most glorious and glorious day. If it wasn't for Ji Tianxing, He would have been one of the lucky few who could obtain the oracle. His future achievements and status wouldn't be any worse than the 6 great holy emperors. But now, all the glory and glory belonged to Ji Tianxing. He had become a complete joke. Ji Tianxing, you damned beast, this sovereign will definitely kill you and tear you to pieces. The incomparable humiliation and anger made him determined that as long as he had the chance, he would make Ji Tianxing die without a burial place. At the same time, in the square outside the temple, the geniuses from various countries hadn't left yet. They were gathered under a huge stone tablet, discussing excitedly. Just now, the black stone tablet that was more than 1,000 feet tall lit up with a dazzling white light, revealing 2 lines of golden words. The sudden change caused everyone to be filled with shock. They only felt that it was inconceivable. Some of the more knowledgeable geniuses immediately understood the meaning of the golden words and cheered excitedly. "Oh my God, an oracle has come. This is incredible. Luli went to the Divine Lord today and was favored by the Divine Lord. An oracle has come." The exclamations and shouts of several young geniuses spread across the square. Like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples, the geniuses from various countries immediately understood that the golden words on the huge stone tablet were the legendary oracle. Everyone swarmed over and surrounded the stone tablet. They raised their heads to look at the dazzling golden oracle and let out cries of surprise as they discussed among themselves. "This is incredible. I am lucky enough to see the oracle with my own eyes. I have heard a long time ago that only the emperors of various countries and the great guardians could receive the oracle when they went to the Divine Lord. I can't believe that Luli got one as well. I read in a book that in the past 1,000 years, only 4 people had received the oracle when they went to the temple to worship. Luli was once an apprentice and a talented martial arts genius. Every couple of years, he would come to the temple to worship. His pious worship must have moved the Divine Lord. That's why the Divine Lord cherished talents and gave him the oracle. Now Luli is going to be famous in all the 6 countries. He can be favored by the Divine Lord. In the future, he will be as successful as the holy emperors of various countries." Everyone's faces were filled with excitement, as well as intense envy and jealousy. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, someone suddenly let out a cry of surprise. "Look, why is that guy coming out?" Many young geniuses turned to the gate of the temple. They saw a handsome man in a white robe walking out of the temple. Everyone was not unfamiliar with him and recognized him immediately. He was Ji Tianxing. Instantly, the gazes of the geniuses from various countries were gathered on him, revealing playful and mocking sneers. "Strange. The worship ceremony is not over yet. Why did this kid come out in advance? The worship is not over, and he dares to leave rashly. This is a great disrespect to the Divine Lord. Ji Tianxing is really unrepentant. Last time, he caused such a big disturbance. Today, he is disrespectful to the Divine Lord. I'm afraid he will be expelled from the vast heaven pagoda soon." Luli brought him to worship the Divine Lord. But when Luli got the oracle, he left in advance. How can the gap between people be so big? Luli is a dragon that soars in the 9 heavens, and this kid is a worm in the mud. What is he? How can he be mentioned in the same breath as Luli? The geniuses from all over the world were discussing without restraint. They were all gloating and laughing without restraint. Among the crowd, Lan Yiqing, Kuanglong, and the geniuses from the rising cloud empire stared at Ji Tianxing, smiling happily as if their hatred had been vented. "Ha ha ha! Ji Tianxing must be kicked out, right? He is disrespectful to the Divine Lord. He has no right to enter the temple to worship. It is only natural that he is kicked out. It is funny that this guy wants to ride on Lu Li's coattails." Luli got the oracle and soared while he ran away with his tail between his legs. How ironic! Of all the people present, the ones from the Rising Cloud Empire were the happiest to see Ji Tianxing. As far as they were concerned, the more humiliated Ji Tianxing was, the more satisfied they would be. In the time for 10 breaths, Ji Tianxing walked across the plaza and arrived in front of the crowd. He glanced at the oracle on the stone tablet. He wanted to leave and go back to the vast heaven pagoda. However, the geniuses from various countries did not shy away from laughing and talking about him with contempt. Chapter 1533. Today, the young geniuses of the Outcloud Empire were here to humiliate Ji Tianxing. Lan Yiqing had led the young geniuses to stop Ji Tianxing from going to the temple to worship. Instead, Ji Tianxing was angered to the point of vomiting blood. Now that Ji Tianxing had been kicked out of the temple, she would not let go of this chance to humiliate Ji Tianxing. The young geniuses stood in a row in front of Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing stopped. He looked at Lan Yiqing and the others with a straight face and said coldly, "Good dogs don't block the way. If you know what's good for you, piss off." As soon as he spoke, Lan Yiqing and the others were livid with rage. Their eyes were burning with rage. Lan Yiqing sneered and said with contempt, "Ji Tianxing, how dare you be so arrogant under these circumstances? You are courting death." Quan Long also grinned and sneered, "Ha, ha, you have no shame in betraying your own country. You want to curry favor with Lu Li of the Empire of Thousand Snow. You are willing to be his lackey. What is the result? He worships the immortal Lord and is favored by the immortal Lord. Now, you are kicked out of the temple. You don't even have the right to worship the immortal Lord." Ji Tianxing's eyes grew cold. There was a glint of coldness in his eyes. He put on a meaningful sneer. He glanced over to Quan Long, Lan Yiqing, and the young geniuses of the Outcloud Empire, and said in a low voice, "You think the immortal Lord gave the oracle to Lu Li and I was kicked out of the temple? So, you bunch of clowns can't wait to jump out and humiliate me?" The young geniuses let out disdainful smirks. "Of course. You're the one humiliating me, you traitor. Ha, ha, ha. At least you know your place. Ji Tianxing, you have been expelled from the Outcloud Empire. You don't deserve to be a citizen of our country. Traitor, kneel down and admit your sins." The geniuses of the Chuyan Empire had the advantage in numbers, and Ji Tianxing had been chased out of the temple. Under such circumstances, the geniuses were naturally arrogant and wanted to take the opportunity to humiliate him, ruthlessly trampling on his dignity in front of the geniuses of the Six Nations. Ji Tianxing suddenly smiled. He was so angry that he laughed. His entire body erupted with soaring battle intent. His incomparably powerful aura was like an invisible mountain that pressed down on everyone. "You bunch of clowns dare to point fingers in front of me? I've already warned you before. Since you insist on seeking death, I'll grant you your wish." He roared with a domineering aura, and his entire body lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky. His body also suddenly grew to a height of more than 10 meters, turning into a majestic giant. "All of you get down." Amidst his furious roar, he suddenly waved his palms and fiercely slapped at the three young geniuses in front of him. Heaven-seizing palm. The three of them were sneering and mocking him when suddenly, two giant golden palms descended from the sky with a force that could destroy heaven and earth. The three of them instantly froze, and their eyes widened in horror. They had never imagined that Ji Tianxing would actually be so arrogant, attacking at the slightest disagreement. The power of the giant golden palms was too terrifying, and the speed of the attack was also extremely fast. Before they could react, they were hit by the giant golden palms. Bam! Bam! A deafening muffled sound suddenly exploded in the square. Two giant pits were formed on the hard and sturdy stone ground. The three young geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire were lying in the ruins, covered in blood, and had already fainted. The sudden upheaval left everyone in the square dumbfounded. The geniuses of the various nations had an incredulous expression as they looked at Ji Tianxing with astonishment and exclaimed, "Oh my God, is this guy crazy? He wants to become enemies with more than 10 geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire? He actually dares to injure other geniuses outside the temple. He's really lawless. This guy is finished. No one dares to cause trouble on Mount God Bestowment. He's dead meat. Haha. The people of the Chu Yun Empire are actually fighting among themselves outside the temple. What a joke." The young geniuses of the various nations quickly retreated to the edge of the square and watched the battle calmly, as if they were waiting for a good show. Song Jianyu, who was in the crowd, stared deeply at Ji Tianxing and sneered. Humph, this guy is really arrogant. He actually dares to fight more than 10 young geniuses in front of everyone. That's good. I can see how strong he is. Perhaps he will even use the legendary sword of Burial of Heaven. At the same time, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others, who were inexplicably shocked, finally came to their senses. They looked at the deep pit in front of them and their 3 companions at the bottom of the pit. They were instantly furious and roared angrily. Ji Tianxing, how dare you make a move outside the divine hall? You traitor, how dare you attack your own countrymen? You're heartless. Ji Tianxing, don't blame us for bullying you because we outnumber you. Today, we're going to clean up the Chuyan Empire and teach you a lesson. Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others were shocked and angry at first. After they calmed down, they were overjoyed. Everyone saw that Ji Tianxing had started the fight. If they joined forces to fight back and beat Ji Tianxing half to death and destroy his cultivation, it would be reasonable. They would not be punished. This was the best chance for them to take revenge and destroy Ji Tianxing. At this thought, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others all used their secret skills and attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. Ji Tianxing was not afraid. He sneered disdainfully. A bunch of trash. I said I would beat you up. Do I have to pick a time? As he said that, he swung his fists again and used his ultimate move to attack the 2 young geniuses not far away. Star-shattering fist. The 2 young geniuses were Kuang Long's fans. They had been following Kuang Long and were very arrogant. They had been cursing him. However, the 2 of them were only at the 4th level of the primordial spirit realm. Before they could defend themselves, the 2 balls of dazzling golden fist radiance had already struck the 2 of them. Bam! Bam! With 2 dull thuds, the 2 young geniuses were sent flying. Blood spurted out of their orifices as they landed 1,000 feet away. The 2 young geniuses smashed into the edge of the square. After they landed, they fell unconscious and did not get up again. At this time, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the 6 young geniuses all used their powerful ultimate moves to attack Ji Tianxing. Pillars of fire, ice blades, and sword radiance of various colors, as well as the radiance of spells that covered the sky, fell from the sky and enveloped Ji Tianxing. The area within a radius of 3,000 meters was instantly transformed into a colorful and dazzling world. Ji Tianxing's figure was about to be drowned by the various spells. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing was fearless even though he was facing 8 opponents alone. Golden light flashed behind him and a pair of golden wings appeared. Chapter 1534. Bam! 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 At that moment, Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others all sneered, as if they had succeeded. Cold, sinister smiles hung on the corners of their lips. The geniuses from the various countries had mixed feelings. Some felt sorry for Bam. Others were gloating. Most of them were certain that Ji Tianxing would not be able to withstand the combined attacks of the 8 geniuses. Even a genius at the 6th level of the primordial soul realm would be killed on the spot, let alone his 5th level of the primordial soul realm. Everyone was dumbfounded. They could not believe what they had seen. He saw that the square with a radius of 3,000 meters had become a fragmented ruin. Several huge, deep pits had appeared, and the surroundings were covered with cracks like a spider web. Ji Tianxing stood above the crater and scathed. He stepped into the sky, his body tall and straight. A pair of large golden wings bloomed behind his back, radiating a holy light onto the sunlight. He was as majestic as a god. He looked down at Kuang Long and the rest coldly. He was exuding a domineering aura. Everyone was stunned for a long time. When they came to their senses, they exclaimed. Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the rest were also shocked. Their hearts were beating wildly. How is this possible? He's unscathed? That damn bastard. In just 2 short months, he's become even stronger than before. We've broken ties with him. No matter what, we have to cripple him today. Otherwise, there will be no end to our troubles. The 8 geniuses communicated secretly. They exchanged looks and reached a consensus. Let's attack together. Let's end this quickly. Along with a few low shouts, the 8 geniuses attacked Ji Tianxing with all their might. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes. He waved his palms without hesitation. He unleashed all his strength and used his ultimate move. Heaven-capturing palm, star-shattering fist. His left hand struck out a giant golden palm, while his right hand struck out a mountain-like golden fist radiance, blasting towards the young geniuses. Pung, pung, pung. Another series of muffled sounds burst out. The 4 young geniuses were sent flying by the giant golden palm and fist radiance. They spat out mouthfuls of blood as they were sent flying and smashed into the square. These 4 people were the same as the previous 5. They could not withstand a single blow from him and were severely injured on the spot. Such a powerful and invincible strength shocked all the geniuses of the various countries, causing them to reveal a look of deep shock. Following that, Ji Tianxing used the divine concealment step, maintaining his stealth state as he quietly rushed to the side of the 2 young geniuses. Bang bang! With a punch and a palm, he sent the 2 young geniuses flying and landed in a corner of the square. Their chests and abdomens caved in, and blood spurted out from their noses and mouths. After falling to the ground, they struggled a few times but failed to get up. At this point, he had already defeated 11 young geniuses. Only Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long were left. They were still using their ultimate techniques to fight against him. Only the 2 of you are left. Even though you have lost to me, I don't mind trampling on you one more time. Ji Tianxing shouted in a dignified tone, emitting a powerful aura. With that said, he was about to use his secret skill to crush Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long. But at this moment, an angry roar like a great bell suddenly exploded in the air above the square. Stop! Everyone turned around. They saw more than a dozen powerful warriors walking out from the gate of the temple. The leader was the chief guardian. He flew over to the square with a gloomy expression. The 6 emissaries followed him and hurried to the square as well. At the end of the group was Lu Li, Jiang Ningxue, and several geniuses of the Empire of Thousand Snow. Clearly, the fight just now was so loud that the chief guardian and the emissaries were alerted. The square quieted down. Nobody said a word. They looked at Ji Tianxing and the chief guardian. Everyone secretly thought that Ji Tianxing was finished this time. The chief guardian would never let him go. Sure enough, the chief guardian looked at Ji Tianxing with a dignified expression and shouted in a deep voice, Ji Tianxing, you guys actually flouted the laws of the vast heaven pagoda and fought outside the temple. How should you be punished? Everyone originally thought that the chief guardian would definitely pin the crime of offending the majesty of the divine master on Ji Tianxing. But the chief guardian did not mention the divine master. He only said that he flouted the laws of the vast heaven pagoda. This made the geniuses of various countries somewhat puzzled. They faintly felt that something was not quite right. Ji Tianxing glanced at the chief guardian expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, Chief Guardian, I suggest you investigate the facts clearly before convicting. The chief guardian froze. Thinking of all the things that happened before, he was somewhat fearful. He frowned and said in a deep voice, Okay, I enforce the law impartially. I never wronged anyone, but I won't be partial to anyone either. Now, you tell me, what in the world is going on here? Ji Tianxing shot a glance at Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long. He said in an indifferent tone, a bunch of mad dogs that bite people indiscriminately. They blocked my path and even wanted to bully me by relying on numbers. Since that's the case, I can only teach them how to behave. The moment these words came out, the geniuses of various countries sucked in a cold breath one after another, revealing looks of shock and astonishment on their faces. My heavens, this guy is simply crazy to the point of defying the laws. Facing the chief guardian's questioning, he still didn't hurry to plead guilty or explain. He's actually so arrogant. Isn't this courting death? Too arrogant. This brat offended the chief guardian once in the first place. Now he has such a vile attitude. He's completely hopeless. Wait and see. He's arrogant for a while now. There'll be time for him to cry right away. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long were scolded in public by Ji Tianxing. They were so ashamed that they trembled in anger. Kuang Long stepped forward bravely and bowed to the chief guardian. He explained, "Chief Guardian, a dozen of our disciples couldn't stand Ji Tianxing's ugly face and his shameless act of betraying our country. In order to protect the dignity of our country, we reprimanded him a little, hoping that he would repent and turn over a new leaf. But we didn't expect him to be so arrogant and audacious. He actually dared to fight outside the divine hall and seriously injured 11 of our countrymen until they fainted." Before Kuang Long could finish his words, the chief guardian and the 6 divine messengers' faces changed. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. The chief guardian looked at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes and asked in disbelief, "Ji Tianxing, did you really start the fight first?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing did not bother to explain or lie. He answered expressionlessly. The glint in the chief guardian's eyes intensified. He asked in disbelief, "You fought a dozen of them alone?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded with an indifferent expression. The chief guardian narrowed his eyes immediately. Perilous waves surged in his heart. This brat fought a dozen of them alone and came out unscathed. But he knocked 11 geniuses unconscious? Why didn't this seat notice that he had such tyrannical strength previously? No wonder this brat has always been arrogant and haughty. No wonder he could cause the Divine Master to send down an oracle. With his strength at the 5th level Essence Spirit Realm, he can reach such terrifying combat strength. He is indeed a rare genius. The few divine messengers exchanged glances and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Previously, they were still trying to figure out the meaning of the oracle. Now, they could finally confirm that the oracle was for Ji Tianxing. Kuang Long saw that the chief guardian and divine messengers were silent. He said somewhat anxiously, "Chief Guardian, Ji Tianxing turned a deaf ear to the vast Heaven Pagoda's laws and openly fought outside the Divine Hall." Chapter 1535. Before Kuang Long could finish his words, the chief guardian bellowed, "Shut up. I have been in charge of the Haoyan Pagoda for hundreds of years. Do I need you to teach me?" "I dare not." Kuang Long was pale with fright. He lowered his head and saluted at once. The chief guardian secretly communicated with the several messengers and then announced, "The Mountain of Investiture is a holy land of martial arts. It does not prohibit disciples from learning from each other. This is a personal grudge between the disciples of the Outcloud Empire and Ji Tianxing. The Haoyan Pagoda will not interfere. However, you should not fight in the plaza in public. You will damage the dignity of the Holy Land. If there are any conflicts or disputes between disciples, please go to the arena to resolve them. All the disciples that have participated in the fight will be punished by going to the Cliff of Reflection for 10 days as a punishment." When the Great Protector announced the punishment, everyone was stunned. Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "No way. This is the punishment?" The chief guardian has always enforced the law with an iron face. How can he be so gentle? These people have made such a big mess, and they are only punished with 10 days of reflection? When did the chief guardian become so gentle? This is not right. Ji Tianxing started the fight. How can he be punished the same as the others? This is not a punishment. It is more like the chief guardian is siding with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing has offended the chief guardian before. How can he be siding with Ji Tianxing? The young geniuses from all over the world were in an uproar. They were discussing with shock and confusion. Everyone could tell that the chief guardian not only did not punish Ji Tianxing according to the rules, but also downplayed the matter and punished him lightly. This was not normal. The geniuses from different countries were confused and could not understand. Only the chief guardian, Ji Tianxing, the 6 messengers, and Lu Li understood the real reason. Standing at the edge of the plaza, Lu Li stared at Ji Tianxing with a gloomy look. Deep down in his eyes was surging hatred and naked jealousy. Lan Yiqing, Kuang Long, and the others came back to their senses and hurriedly complained to the Great Guardian. Great Guardian, it was clearly Ji Tianxing who caused trouble first. Great Guardian, please deal with this matter impartially and punish Ji Tianxing severely. Only then can we convince the masses. Ji Tianxing is vicious and merciless. He has injured 11 disciples. He must be severely punished. Chief Protector, Ji Tianxing offended the Divine Master during the worship ceremony before. Today, he once again blasphemed the Divine Master's dignity. He must be expelled from the Clear Sky Pagoda. Seeing that the 8 young geniuses had all opened their mouths to protest, the Great Guardian's face turned cold as he shouted in a dignified tone, "Shut up. I'm merciful. That's why I'm giving you a lighter punishment. If you continue to pester me without reason, I will punish you severely. As for offending the Divine Master's dignity, is that something you have the right to say? Open your eyes wide and take a good look at what the oracle on the stone tablet says." Hearing this, all the geniuses were stunned. Everyone turned their heads in unison and looked at the golden words on the stone tablet. Anyone who wasn't an idiot could understand what the Great Guardian meant. They could all guess that there was something more to the oracle. As expected, when they took a closer look at the oracle, their expressions all changed. Among the crowd, Perfect Dean was even more shocked. He exclaimed in disbelief. When he first entered the Mount of Investiture, he was struck by lightning. This is Ji Tianxing? He pointed out the answer in one sentence. Everyone was stunned. They were almost scared out of their wits. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long, in particular, were stupefied. They stared at the oracle in a daze. They were petrified. No way. This is impossible. I don't believe this is true. Ji Tianxing, that bastard. How could he get the oracle? Isn't it Lu Li who got the oracle? How come it's Ji Tianxing now? Wasn't Ji Tianxing kicked out of the temple in advance? How can he get the oracle to come? Crazy. We must be out of our minds. The nearly 100 geniuses from the 6 states were so shocked that they could not speak coherently. They did not know what to do. At this moment, the Great Guardian announced in a loud voice, Ji Tianxing paid his respects to the Immortal Master today. He is favored by the Immortal Master, and the oracle is here. In the past 200 years, this is the first time the Immortal Master has sent down an oracle. This is not only an honor for Ji Tianxing, but also for the entire Haoyan Pagoda. It is worth celebrating. Because of this, I have shown you mercy and given you a lighter punishment. Hearing the Great Protector's words, everyone came to a sudden realization. No wonder the Great Guardian suddenly changed his attitude and sided with Ji Tianxing. A person that could be favored by the Immortal Master and get the oracle to come should be protected and valued. But no one could figure it out. Didn't Ji Tianxing offend the Immortal Master's dignity? How could he be favored by the Immortal Master? Of the dozens of young geniuses here, anyone could get the oracle except for Ji Tianxing. But the truth was right in front of them. The Great Guardian and the 6 messengers all thought so. Lu Li, who was in the corner of the plaza, also looked awful. He was filled with disappointment and shame. All signs pointed to the fact that the oracle was given to Ji Tianxing by the Immortal Master. The plaza was in a hubbub of voices. Everyone was discussing excitedly. They still could not accept this reality. The Great Guardian frowned. He waved his sleeve and ordered, "Let's go. This is the end of today's matter." Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long clenched their fists in anger and glared at Ji Tianxing. No matter how unwilling they were, they dared not to disobey the Great Guardian's order. They could only suppress their anger and humiliation, turned around and left. But at this moment, a cold voice sounded in the plaza. "Wait, did I say you could leave?" The sudden cold shout shocked everyone, causing the entire square to quieten down. Everyone turned to Ji Tianxing in surprise and confusion. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long also suppressed their anger. They stared at him with hatred and said in a deep voice, "Ji Tianxing, what do you want? The Great Guardian has announced the punishment. What else do you want?" Ji Tianxing looked down at the two and said with a straight face, "I will abide by the punishment announced by the Great Guardian. But we have not settled our personal grudge yet. Let's settle this once and for all in front of everyone." Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long's expressions changed. They were filled with killing intent. "Ji Tianxing, don't push us too far. Push us too far. Ji Tianxing curled his lips and said with contempt, "Just now, when you stopped me in such a threatening manner and humiliated me in turns, did you ever think of pushing me too far? I didn't want to pay attention to you clowns, but you kept pestering me. How can I let you go? I'm going to make you swallow all the filthy words you've used to insult me." Chapter 1536. An incomparably domineering voice spread throughout the entire plaza, shocking everyone's hearts. The various countries' geniuses all stared at Ji Tianxing, revealing thick shock. Their heartbeats and blood flow accelerated. This guy, really daring to say it. This is the true lawlessness. Either kneel down yourselves, or I'll beat you all to kneel. Too domineering. This is the unyielding character and domineering aura that a peerless genius should have. Yeah, even the divine master favored him and gave him an oracle. How can such a peerless genius be humiliated? Don't you guys forget, Ji Tianxing is the Outcloud Empire's #1 genius to begin with. He defeated those two people long ago. Many geniuses discussed animatedly, staring fixedly at Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long, wanting to see how they would wrap things up. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long nearly exploded in anger. Their faces alternated between green and white, and their hands and feet were trembling. The two were also martial Dao geniuses with extraordinary backgrounds. They had always been proud and arrogant. They had never suffered such humiliation in their lives. Kuang Long was in a violent rage. His eyes flickered with scarlet killing intent as he stared fixedly at Ji Tianxing. His voice was low and hoarse as he shouted, "Ji Tianxing, you bastard, even if I, Kuang Long, die in battle, I absolutely won't submit to you. So what if you obtain the oracle? In my eyes, you'll always be a petty person who fawns on the powerful." In contrast, Lan Yiqing was still considered calm, restraining her anger and killing intent. She raised her head to look at the Chief Protector and said in a deep voice, "Chief Protector, you saw it. Ji Tianxing ignored your decision and was overbearing." The Chief Protector furrowed his brows and said expressionlessly, "This seat already said that the vast heaven pagoda won't interfere in the personal grudges between disciples. However, this seat and the 6 divine envoys are present. We can be the witnesses and allow you guys to duel. But no lives can be lost." 2 simple sentences expressed the vast heaven pagoda's attitude. Lan Yiqing was in complete despair. Counting on the Chief Protector to resolve the situation clearly could not be counted on. After all, a genius who obtained the oracle would receive the Divine Master's favor and would definitely become a peerless powerhouse in the future. Compared to Ji Tianxing, she and Kuang Long appeared insignificant. It was already extremely benevolent of the Great Guardian to protect their lives. The hope in Lan Yiqing's eyes faded bit by bit, eventually turning into endless coldness and killing intent. She didn't regret her previous actions. She only regretted that she didn't use the Lan family's power to kill Ji Tianxing back in the Chuyan Empire. Kuang Long took the lead and flew into the air, standing 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing, staring at him with a murderous look on his face. There was a bronze chain wrapped around his body, and his entire body was emitting a dark red light, releasing a powerful aura. "Ji Tianxing, last time I was careless and lost to you. Today," he glared at Ji Tianxing and growled coldly. But Ji Tianxing ignored him. He pointed a finger at Lan Yiqing and said indifferently, "Come at me together. I don't want to waste time." As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. How arrogant and domineering. Kuang Long was completely ignored. This unparalleled humiliation almost made him vomit blood. Lan Yiqing was also angered by Ji Tianxing's disdainful attitude. "You'd asterisk Ned bastard. You're too arrogant. Today, I'll avenge myself." As she spoke, a blue light flashed in her palm, and a crystal-clear blue sword appeared. It was the extreme ice sword. "Stars in the sky," she growled coldly. Her hands formed a mysterious seal, and she controlled the extreme ice sword to shoot out 360 rays of icy blue sword radiance towards Ji Tianxing. The sword radiance covered the sky, as dazzling as the stars in the sky. The terrifying sword radiance exuded an extremely cold aura, freezing everything within a radius of 20,000 feet. In an instant, Ji Tianxing's body was surrounded by more than 300 rays of sword radiance. He didn't take out any weapon, nor did he use his primordial spirit dharma power. He only used his fist to shoot out 2 rays of dark golden fist radiance. Star-shattering fist. He used all of his power, and the fist radiance was as powerful as a mountain. Kaboom! The icy blue sword radiance that covered the sky was smashed into countless ice shards by the fists. At this moment, Kuang Long had arrived. He waved the ancient bronze chain and slashed out 19 blood-red giant swords, slashing towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing waved his hands again and slapped at the sword radiance. Heaven-seizing palm. The 2 giant golden palms slammed into the blood-red sword, causing 2 loud bangs to ring out. The dozen blood-red giant swords were all shattered. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long's full-powered attacks were easily neutralized by Ji Tianxing. Both of them were shocked, and their eyes were filled with worry. The geniuses and oracles of God from various countries all retreated to the edge of the square, watching the battle calmly. At this moment, Ji Tianxing launched his counterattack. He suddenly used the stealth step and disappeared into the sky. The next moment, he appeared beside Kuang Long and punched him in the face. Crack! Kuang Long didn't expect this, and he couldn't dodge at all. The left side of his face caved in on the spot. His bones were shattered, and his flesh was badly mangled. Under the intense pain, he waved his bronze chain crazily and released 2 blood-red giant dragons to attack Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing's figure instantly disappeared, dodging the blood dragon's attack. The 2 blood-red dragons flew across the square and were about to hit the temple. At this critical moment, the Great Guardian waved his right hand and grabbed the 2 blood-red giant dragons, crushing them. The 2 destructive giant dragons were as weak as earthworms in front of him. At this moment, Ji Tianxing dodged the attacks of Kuang Long and Lan Yiqing and appeared on Kuang Long's right side like a ghost. Bang! He punched the right side of Kuang Long's face again. The right side of Kuang Long's face was smashed, and blood and broken bones spurted out. He was completely unrecognizable. Kuang Long had been the one who yelled the loudest, calling Ji Tianxing a traitor, a dog, and shameless. But now, Ji Tianxing had purposely smashed his entire face as punishment for his foul mouth. Kuang Long flew into a rage after suffering such heavy injuries. He immediately summoned his primordial spirit and used his ultimate skill to attack Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, turned invisible and dodged the attack. He appeared and disappeared like a ghost and charged towards Lan Yiqing. Before Lan Yiqing could react, he swept his leg out and hit her knees. With a cracking sound, her legs were broken on the spot, and she let out a cry of pain. Then, Ji Tianxing's figure flashed in and out of the square. Every time he appeared, he was beside Lan Yiqing or Kuang Long, and he used his fists and feet to injure them. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long were beaten to a pulp. Countless bones and joints were broken, and their bodies were covered in blood. Even if they used their primordial spirit dharma forms and domain mystic arts, they couldn't do anything to Ji Tianxing. Back in the ranking battle, Ji Tianxing was only at the 4th level of the primordial spirit realm. Lan Yiqing could fight him for a while before losing. Chapter 1537. After a short while, the battle on the square stopped. Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long were both covered in wounds. Their tattered clothes were dyed red with blood, and they looked particularly miserable. Kuang Long was beyond recognition. His body was almost destroyed, but he still stood stubbornly on the ruins and did not fall. Lan Yiqing's knees and ankles were broken. He could not stand at all. He could only kneel on one knee with the extreme ice sword in his hands. Both of them were panting as they tried their best to suppress their injuries. They could no longer fight back. If they continued fighting, their bodies would definitely be destroyed. Ji Tianxing had beaten the 2 of them to such a state with absolute dominance, but he was not injured at all. He stood 100 steps away from the 2 of them. His face was cold as he stared at them indifferently. Kneel. Apologize. A cold and majestic voice rang out above the square. It shook Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long's hearts. Both of them shuddered. They were furious. Lan Yiqing's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. The hearts of the geniuses from all over the world were also in their throats. Everyone stared at Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long, wondering what they would do. Refuse to admit their mistakes and apologize? Then they would definitely end up in a miserable state. If they really did kneel and apologize, their reputation would be ruined. They would never be able to hold their heads high again. If they stayed on Mount God Seal, they would always be humiliated and ridiculed by others. Only the Great Guardian and the 6 divine envoys could resolve this situation. However, the Great Guardian had already stated that he would not interfere with their personal grudge with Ji Tianxing. Now, they could only solve this problem themselves. Ji Tianxing, don't even think about making me apologize. Kill me if you have the guts. Kuang Long straightened his neck and raised his mangled head as he let out a furious roar. Lan Yiqing held the extreme ice sword in both hands. His face was extremely cold. He stared sharply at Ji Tianxing and said through gritted teeth, "You want me to apologize? Over my dead body." Both of them were very determined. They would rather die than kneel and apologize. Ji Tianxing had long expected this. He sneered, "You're really stubborn." As soon as he finished speaking, a majestic primordial spirit pressure gushed out from his body and pressed down on Kuang Long and Lan Yiqing. An invisible, enormous pressure descended from the sky like a towering mountain. Instantly, the two of them bent their backs and lowered their heads. Lan Yiqing was originally kneeling on one knee, holding the extreme ice sword with both hands. At this moment, she was forced to kneel on the ground. Her body was bent like a bow, and her head was almost touching the ground. Mad Dragon was originally standing, but at this moment he also bowed deeply, as if he was bowing to Ji Tianxing. Cracking noises could be heard from all the bones in his body, as if they were about to break. However, he was still stubbornly holding on, desperately resisting the suppressive power, unwilling to kneel no matter what. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing waved his hands and formed a mysterious seal, executing a secret technique. Dharma body of heaven and earth. As the seal was formed, the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles gathered on his body. Instantly, his aura skyrocketed, and his entire person became more sacred and majestic. He was as majestic as a mountain and as majestic as a god. "Kneel!" He roared angrily, releasing an even more powerful suppressive power, which slammed toward Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon. Mad Dragon was suddenly hit hard and could no longer hold on. His legs were instantly shattered, and he knelt on the ground with a plop. 2 deep depressions appeared on the ground that was filled with rubble as he knelt, almost swallowing his 2 legs. Under the terrifying suppressive power, his spine kept bending, and his head slowly reached toward the ground. Then, with a muffled bang, his entire head was smashed into the ground, creating a crater. Lan Yiqing's fate was the same. She knelt on the ground, half of her body buried in the rubble. Her head was also smashed into the ground, buried in dust. No matter how unyielding and angry they were forced to kneel and kowtow to Ji Tianxing to apologize. Their reputations were ruined just like that. Their pride and dignity as prodigies were also trampled to the point of being worthless. The prodigies of the 6 nations all felt a chill run down their spines as they looked at Ji Tianxing with fear and trepidation. This guy, what a ruthless method. He didn't kill Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon, but this kind of humiliation was even more terrifying than killing them. From now on, they must never offend Ji Tianxing. Otherwise, they would suffer a fate worse than death. With that in mind, the young prodigies who had mocked Ji Tianxing before couldn't help but shrink their necks, and their hearts were filled with worry. At this moment, Ji Tianxing looked down at Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon. He said in an indifferent voice, "There is no source of fortune or disaster. Those who humiliate others are bound to humiliate themselves. Don't provoke me in the future." As his voice fell, he retracted his invisible suppressive power. The sky within a radius of 10,000 feet was instantly unsealed. Lan Yiqing and Mad Dragon had regained their freedom. They hurriedly struggled out of the rubble and fled in a sorry state. The unparalleled humiliation and the discussions of the prodigies of the Six Nations made them want to die. They didn't dare to stay for even a moment longer. They didn't even dare to look at anyone. They just wanted to leave as soon as possible and escape from everyone's sight. Their leg bones were already shattered. With the support of their magic power, they staggered out of the plaza and returned to Chu Yun Palace in a daze. The prodigies of the various nations looked at their sorry figures as they left, and a wave of whispers and discussions erupted. This matter was over. The great guardian waved his hand and ordered 20 golden-armored guards to drag away the unconscious prodigies of the Chu Yun Empire and bring them back to Chu Yun Palace to recuperate. Ji Tianxing didn't stay any longer. He turned around and was about to leave the plaza. However, right at this moment, a vigorous voice suddenly sounded in the square. Wait! The sudden cold voice made the prodigies of the various nations quiet down. Even the great guardian and the 6 divine envoys who were about to leave stopped when they heard the voice. A tall man in a dark green robe walked out of the crowd of the great Qian Empire. Under everyone's gaze, he stepped into the air and caught up to Ji Tianxing. He stood 100 steps away from him. This man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His face was upright, and his body was tall and straight. He exuded a powerful aura, and there was a trace of arrogance between his brows. When the prodigies of the various nations saw his face, they immediately revealed a puzzled expression and began to whisper to each other. Isn't that the number 1 prodigy of the great Qian Empire, Qian Feiyong? What does he want to do? He actually stopped Ji Tianxing? Could it be that he wants to teach Ji Tianxing a lesson? That's impossible, right? Qian Feiyong is from the great Qian Empire. How could he help someone from the Chu Yun Empire? Chapter 1538. Everyone had a premonition that Qian Feiyong had a motive for standing up now. The geniuses who were about to leave all returned to the square and watched. Even the chief enforcer and the 6 god envoys were puzzled. They didn't know what Qian Feiyong wanted to do. Ji Tianxing glanced at Qian Feiyong and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" Qian Feiyong stared at him, his body emitting an arrogant aura. He didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Ji Tianxing, many people think that you've received the God Master's favor and brought about the oracle. From the first sentence of the oracle, it does make some sense. But I don't believe it, and I can't accept this result. It's not just me, but the geniuses of the other countries also don't believe it. Qian Feiyong's expression was arrogant, and his tone was full of energy. Following his words, the young geniuses of the other countries started to discuss. Indeed, nearly half of the geniuses didn't believe that the oracle was for Ji Tianxing, and they all agreed with Qian Feiyong. Ji Tianxing frowned and looked at him coldly. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. No, it's very important. Qian Feiyong shook his head and sneered. He said in a playful tone, "In terms of martial talent, you may not be very strong. In terms of strength, you're not even in the top 5, and you're even weaker than me. Including me, there are at least 5 geniuses more qualified than you to receive the oracle." So, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, his tone still indifferent. Qian Feiyong's body emitted a strong fighting spirit. He stared at him and said word by word, "So, I want to challenge you in front of everyone. I just want everyone to see the truth. The God Master's oracle was definitely not for you. I'm more qualified than you to receive the God Master's favor." His thunderous voice echoed in the square, filled with a domineering and confident aura. The geniuses of the other countries immediately understood Qian Feiyong's goal. They all burst into discussion and cheered. Many people were cheering for him. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and coldly looked at Qian Feiyong. He was thinking, this Qian Feiyong is a scheming bastard. He openly challenged me in front of everyone, making it difficult for me to refuse. If he defeats me in front of everyone, not only will he diminish my prestige, but also raise his reputation. Previously, Jiao had given him a name list that recorded the information of the 6 nations' geniuses. He knew that Qian Feiyong was the great's #1 genius. This person had strength at the 6th firmament essence soul realm. He was ranked 4th among the geniuses of the 6 states, second only to Jiang Ningxue. Ji Tianxing thought to himself, ever since I entered Mount God Seal, I haven't fought in front of anyone. To that, although I injured Lan Yiqing, Quanglong, and the others, and shocked the geniuses of the other countries with the power of the oracle. But that's not enough. I'm the Outcloud Empire's #1 genius. It's normal for me to defeat Lan Yiqing and Quanglong. Since Qian Feiyang challenged me, I'll use this opportunity to crush him in front of everyone. He wants to trample on my prestige. I'll use him as a stepping stone to intimidate the other geniuses. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing made up his mind. At this moment, Qian Feiyang saw him frowning and not saying anything. Qian Feiyang sneered contemptuously. Ji Tianxing, you're so quiet. Don't tell me you're rejecting my challenge. This isn't a personal grudge. It's just a friendly spar. We can go to the arena and ask the divine envoys to supervise the battle. The great guardian frowned and shouted in a stern voice, Qian Feiyang, I just announced the result. The divine master gave the divine oracle to Ji Tianxing. He's the son of the divine oracle. Ji Tianxing fought the Outcloud Empire's disciples alone and defeated them all. That's enough to prove his strength. Moreover, he just fought and used up a lot of his spiritual power. How can you take advantage of him and challenge him now? Although the Great Guardian's words were fair and impartial, the Great Guardian's words were not biased. However, when many geniuses heard this, they felt that the head enforcer was biased towards Ji Tianxing and felt sour in their hearts. Qian Feiyang saluted the Great Guardian and smiled. Great Guardian, the battle just now seemed wonderful and shocking, but was actually very ordinary. I could defeat the Outcloud Empire's trash alone. He then looked at Ji Tianxing and said in a mocking tone, since you used up a lot of your spiritual power and don't dare to accept the challenge, we'll do it another day. I'll give you 3 days to recuperate. 3 days later, we'll meet on the arena. Before he could finish, Ji Tianxing interrupted him and said in a low voice, there's no need for another day. Let's do it now, right here. Hearing that Shun Tian agreed on the spot, Qian Feiyang sneered. The young geniuses from various countries also cheered excitedly, their faces full of anticipation. To the crowd, Ji Tianxing's bullying of the Outcloud Empire's geniuses seemed arrogant and domineering. But it wasn't that difficult. Only by fighting with the top geniuses could one's true strength be shown. It was more exciting and more enjoyable. The Great Guardian was stunned. He frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing. He secretly transmitted his voice. Ji Tianxing, don't try to be brave. If you lose, it will affect my and the oracle's prestige. Ji Tianxing transmitted his voice back. He said with certainty, a mere Qian Feiyang is nothing to worry about. If he wants to use me as a stepping stone, he's destined to break his leg. Seeing that he was so confident, the Great Guardian didn't say anything else. Swoosh! He waved his palms and shot out a 7-colored light screen that covered the sky and covered half of the square. A saint-level defensive array was immediately formed, protecting the square in front of the palace. The Great Guardian, the 6 oracles, and the geniuses from various countries all retreated outside the array, leaving only Ji Tianxing and Qian Feiyang in the square. No matter how they fought, they wouldn't destroy the buildings outside the array, nor would they hurt the people outside. The two stood in the ruined square, staring at each other coldly, secretly accumulating their aura and magic power. Qian Feiyang said contemptuously, what a pity. You just got the oracle. Before you can enjoy the glory of the oracle, you're going to be stepped on by me. I want everyone to see that I'm more outstanding than the oracle's son. From now on, the glory and resources that should have belonged to you will belong to me. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly. He wasn't angry at all. He said indifferently, your plan is good, but it's destined to fail. You'll become another clown. Chapter 1539. Qian Feiyang purposely infuriated Ji Tianxing to affect his mental state and combat strength. However, Ji Tianxing was not affected at all. Instead, his confident and arrogant words angered Qian Feiyong so much that he frowned and his expression turned cold. However, he immediately calmed down and retaliated with an even more arrogant tone. Hee, what's the use of sharp tongue? I've long reached the 6th level of the Essence Soul Realm, while you're only at the 5th level. Furthermore, your dermic powers have been greatly depleted. Don't say that I'm bullying you. I can easily defeat you without using any Dharma treasures or weapons. Ji Tianxing revealed a look of pity and chuckled. I advise you to take out your Dharma treasures and go all out. Otherwise, you won't even be able to last 3 moves before collapsing. How arrogant! Qian Feiyong grew even angrier as his eyes emitted a dense cold light. He had to admit that he was not as calm as Ji Tianxing in terms of mental state. There was no way he could win in a verbal battle. He decided not to waste any more words and immediately took out a dark golden spear and gripped it tightly in his hands. It was a golden divine spear about 2 meters long and as thick as a child's arm. A golden coiling dragon was engraved on the spear's body. The long and narrow diamond-shaped spear blade flickered with a resplendent golden light and released an extremely domineering aura. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was a superior grade Essence Soul Realm Dharma treasure with extraordinary power. Ji Tianxing, cut the crap. I'll definitely defeat you within 10 moves with this coiling dragon spear. Qian Feiyong roared with an imposing aura. Flames surged from his body as he brandished the coiling dragon spear with both hands and stabbed it at Ji Tianxing. Otherworldly dragon. The coiling dragon spear stabbed with all its might, emitting a dazzling red light and letting out a high-pitched dragon roar. In the sky, 100-feet-long fiery red dragon immediately condensed. It swooped down from the sky and pounced at Ji Tianxing. Immediately, the entire square was enveloped by a dazzling fiery light, turning it dark red. The terrifyingly high temperature burned the air, turning the defensive array into a vacuum. Ji Tianxing was in the sea of fire and was about to be pounced on by the fiery red dragon. At the critical moment, he calmly stretched out his hand, and a black sword appeared in his palm. This treasure sword was pitch black and icy cold. A black dragon coiled around the hilt of the sword. This was the black dragon sword formed by the little black dragon. Draw your sword. Ji Tianxing let out a cold snort. His mind merged with the black dragon's sword, and with all his strength, he slashed out 100-meter-long pitch-black sword light. Boom! Amidst a deafening muffled sound, the pitch-black greatsword struck the fiery red dragon head-on. The giant dragon immediately collapsed, exploding into a sky full of flowing flames, like a torrential downpour on the square. However, the power of the pitch-black sword didn't decrease in the slightest as it slashed at Qian Feiyong. Qian Feiyong reacted quickly and used the coiling dragon spear to block in front of him, dodging the attack. He was sent flying backward, crashing heavily into the light wall of the defensive formation. Without waiting for him to counterattack, Ji Tianxing had already used the divine concealment step and appeared in front of him, slashing out a second time with all his might. Heaven-cleaving sword. The black dragon's sword emitted a golden light that soared into the sky. It condensed into a gigantic golden sword that was hundreds of meters long and instantly struck Qian Feiyong. Kaboom! Another thunderous boom rang out, and Qian Feiyong was sent flying again by the gigantic sword. His magic power shield, green robe, and soft armor were all shattered into pieces. When he crawled up from the rubble, his clothes were already ragged, his hair was disheveled, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. Seeing this scene, the chief guardian and the 6 gods' envoys all revealed shocked expressions. The various prodigies were also shocked, and they all let out cries of disbelief. Wow, Ji Tianxing is actually this strong? They've only exchanged 2 moves, and Qian Feiyong is already beaten to the point where he can't even fight back? That shouldn't be. Qian Feiyong is a prodigy ranked 4th. How can he not be able to block Ji Tianxing? Looks like we've all underestimated Ji Tianxing. That guy's true strength is too terrifying. I didn't believe that Ji Tianxing was the child of God before, but now I'm starting to believe it. The exclamations and discussions of the crowd made Qian Feiyong feel extremely humiliated. Just now, he had boasted in front of everyone that he would defeat Ji Tianxing in front of everyone and take away his honor and cultivation resources. Now, he had been beaten to a pulp after exchanging 2 moves with Ji Tianxing. This was too embarrassing. In his grief and indignation, Qian Feiyong's eyes burned with fury. He shouted angrily, "I thought that I could defeat you with 80% of my strength. I didn't expect you to be so capable. Since that's the case, try my ultimate skill." As he spoke, he waved the coiling dragon spear with both hands, and golden spear shadows covered the sky. In the sky behind him, a dazzling flame lit up, and a 100 feet tall shadow appeared. It was a fiery divine lion the size of a mountain, and it was his primordial spirit Dharma form. Heavenly Fire 10,000 Dragon Spear. Qian Feiyong unleashed all his strength and used his ultimate skill. Tens of thousands of huge golden spear shadows covered the sky above the square, forming a dense forest of spears. The fiery divine lion also waved its sharp claws, opened its huge mouth, and spat out crimson flames that covered the sky and poured down like a flood. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The endless heavenly fire merged with the tens of thousands of spear shadows and bombarded Ji Tianxing like rain. In an instant, the entire square was covered by the spear shadows. The square was in chaos, and no one could see where Ji Tianxing was. Boom, 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 boom. A series of loud explosions shook the sky. The entire square began to shake violently as the raging fire and golden light fiercely battered the defensive formation. Fortunately, the array was a saint-level array and was unbreakable. The destructive shockwaves could not affect the people outside the array. However, everyone's hearts were in their throats. They all stared at the array with wide eyes, waiting for the result. After a while, the golden light and flames that covered the sky dissipated. Qian Feiyong stood proudly in the sky with a coiling dragon spear in his hand, looking majestic. In the sky opposite him, Ji Tianxing also stood proudly in the sky. Not only was he unscathed, but his long hair was not messy at all, and his white robe was still as white as snow. Even if the torrential fire poured down and a myriad dragon spear attacked, it could not harm a single hair on his body. Qian Feiyong was dumbfounded. His eyes were wide open, and his heart was filled with shock. The geniuses of various countries were also dumbfounded, and they all exclaimed. Ji Tianxing looked at Qian Feiyong with a disdainful sneer. "Is this your ultimate skill? How disappointing. Now I'll show you what a true ultimate skill is." As he spoke, a golden light surged out from behind him, and a golden sword that was thousands of feet tall appeared. It was his primordial spirit Dharma form. His body turned into a raging inferno and merged with the 1,000-foot-tall golden sword of primordial spirit. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. The giant sword that was surrounded by flames and purple lightning slashed down from the sky toward Qian Feiyong with a power that could split the sky and earth. The overwhelming flames and lightning condensed into the shadow of a vermilion bird that was as large as a mountain. The entire square was covered by flames and lightning, and the space was in chaos. Chapter 1540. Qian Feiyong's expression changed drastically as he looked at the giant sword that was slashing toward him. His eyes were filled with fear. He didn't expect Ji Tianxing to be able to use such a miraculous sword technique and unleash such terrifying power. At this critical moment, he could only unleash all of his dermic powers and hold the coiling dragon spear to meet the giant sword. One spear to end the universe. He let out a low roar and used another trump card. Vast dermic powers poured into the coiling dragon spear, turning it into a giant dragon spear that was hundreds of feet long. A golden dragon's shadow also appeared. The golden dragon spear unleashed an extremely powerful force and pierced toward the giant sword. This spear seemed to be able to pierce through the sky and destroy all obstacles. Its aura was extremely violent. This was Qian Feiyang's most powerful technique. He didn't want to reveal this trump card and planned to use it in the assessment half a year later. But now, he had to use it in advance. Kaboom! With a loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens, the vermilion bird's sacred sword and the golden dragon spear collided, unleashing a torrent of golden light and flames. In an instant, the golden dragon spear that was hundreds of feet long was smashed into pieces by the giant's sword and exploded. Then, the vermilion bird sacred sword slashed at Qian Feiyang and slammed into the ground of the plaza. With a loud rumble, the entire plaza was split into 2 halves by the giant's sword, and a wide gully appeared in the middle. Endless amounts of gravel and dust surged into the sky, obscuring the scene inside the array. Outside the array, everyone held their breaths and stared at the flames and lightning inside the array, searching for Ji Tianxing and Qian Feiyang's figures. Nobody knew who would emerge victorious in the clash of the two's ultimate killer moves. Would Qian Feiyang defeat Ji Tianxing and become famous on Mount Godseal and be valued and nurtured by the Clear Sky Pagoda? Or would Ji Tianxing defeat Qian Feiyang in a domineering manner and prove the extraordinary talent of the Son of God? No one could tell, but they were all looking forward to the outcome. After a long time, the dust and the brilliance of spells in the great array gradually dissipated. He saw that the entire square had turned into ruins. There was a huge gully on the ground, and the surroundings were full of holes and cracks. In the sky, there was only a proud and aloof figure in a white robe. He held a black sword and stood with his hands behind his back. His body was not tall and sturdy, but it was as imposing as a mountain, making people look up to him. Without a doubt, this was Ji Tianxing. He was not injured at all. His expression was normal as he calmly looked down at the ravine on the ground. As for Qian Feiyang, he was struggling to crawl out of the wide gully. When he climbed out of the gully and stood in the square, everyone was dumbfounded. His hands were empty. The coiling dragon spear had been knocked away long ago, stuck in the ruins at the edge of the square. The jade crown on his head was also shattered, and his long hair was disheveled and curly, like a chicken nest on his head. His clothes were ragged, and his entire body was covered with bloody holes and wounds. He was charred black and badly mutilated. His right shoulder was empty. His entire right arm had been blasted into smithereens, and the wound was charred black like charcoal. This kind of injury was really too miserable. Compared to Ji Tianxing, who was not injured at all, the difference was too great. It was clear who won and who lost. Before the fight, Qian Feiyang had arrogantly said that he could easily defeat Ji Tianxing without using any magical treasures or weapons. Ji Tianxing had fought back then. If he did not use any magical treasures or weapons, he would not even be able to last 3 moves and would be beaten down. Now, the two of them had exchanged 3 moves. Qian Feiyang had used his magical treasure, the coiling dragon spear, but he was still defeated by Ji Tianxing's sword. He was seriously injured, and his right arm was chopped off. Not only the geniuses of the 6 nations, even the Great Guardian and the 6 gods' envoys did not expect this result. The difference in strength between the 4th-ranked Qian Feiyang and Ji Tianxing was actually so great. After a few seconds of silence, everyone immediately burst out in exclamations and discussions in disbelief. This is too unbelievable. Ji Tianxing only used 3 moves to defeat Qian Feiyang. If I did not see it with my own eyes, I would definitely not believe it. Ji Tianxing at the 5th Firmament Essence Soul Realm is actually several times stronger than Qian Feiyang at the 6th Firmament. Ji Tianxing defeated Qian Feiyang despite being at a higher level. Furthermore, he only used 3 moves. This is practically a miracle, as expected of the son of the Oracle who is favored by the Divine Master. He is too heaven-defying. After witnessing this miracle with their own eyes, the geniuses of the various nations no longer had any doubts about Ji Tianxing's identity as the son of the Oracle. Many geniuses who had been watching coldly from the sidelines were now filled with envy and reverence for him. Those who had mocked and criticized him were so ashamed that their faces flushed red when they recalled what they had said. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. The great guardian and the six gods' envoys also revealed relieved smiles. After all, Ji Tianxing had crushed Qian Feiyang in an invincible manner to obtain victory. This proved that their judgment was right. Ji Tianxing was the son of the oracle. Just as the crowd was cheering and discussing, Ji Tianxing spoke. He looked at Qian Feiyang expressionlessly and asked, "I said that I would only need 3 moves to defeat you. Are you convinced now?" Qian Feiyang stood in the ruins in tattered clothes. His left hand was clutching his mangled right shoulder as his eyes shimmered with a cold glint. A severed arm could still regrow through recuperation. However, the defeat and humiliation that Ji Tianxing had brought him could never be washed away. He stared intently at Ji Tianxing as he enunciated each word with a hoarse voice. "Ji Tianxing, I admit that you are indeed very strong. However, I will defeat you sooner or later to wash away my humiliation." Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "You have already been defeated by me. What future do you have to talk about? Do you want to wash away your humiliation? You will never have the chance in this lifetime." His tone was very calm, as though he was stating a fact. But in Qian Feiyang's ears, it was incomparably ear-piercing and heart-wrenching. Ji Tianxing's arrogance and contempt came from the bottom of his heart and soul. It was absolutely not intentional. Qian Feiyang could feel that Ji Tianxing did not place him in his sights at all, let alone treat him as an opponent. Just as Ji Tianxing said, he was just a stepping stone. His heart was filled with rage and humiliation, but he could only grit his teeth and forcefully endure it. He silently walked out of the defensive grand array and left the plaza in front of the hall. He was not willing to stay for a second longer and did not want to say a word more either. That would be seeking his own humiliation. In the martial arts world, it was the law of the jungle to begin with. Martial arts cultivation was also 100 barges striving against the current, competing with others, battling with heaven and earth. Every genius, every martial arts powerhouse would do their best to vie for cultivation resources. Qian Feiyang wanted to rise up and obtain the vast heaven pagoda's high regard and grooming. He naturally had to rack his brains to find opportunities. Previously, Ji Tianxing was a nobody. Qian Feiyang completely disdained to pay attention to him. Currently, Ji Tianxing's limelight was at its peak. If he could trample him underfoot, Qian Feiyang would gain both fame and fortune. His thoughts were beyond criticism. His plan was also very perfect. It was just a pity that he underestimated Ji Tianxing's strength, causing himself to land in a humiliating and wretched state. Chapter 1541. After this battle, Ji Tianxing became famous on the Mount of Canonization. He replaced Qian Feiyang and became the 4th most powerful of the 6 states. None of the geniuses dared to belittle him or talk about him behind his back. Everyone understood that this son of Oracle deserved his title and that he would rise rapidly and become famous in the 6 states. After the battle, Ji Tianxing didn't linger. He left the plaza and went back to the Chamber of Mystical Books. Chief Guardian and the 6 messengers left as well. Only the geniuses from different states stayed in the plaza. They gathered in 2s and 3s and discussed what happened. At the edge of the plaza, Luli looked on coldly. A glint of coldness flickered in his eyes. He wanted to use this opportunity to win over Ji Tianxing and even recruit him. However, today, Luli became a laughingstock. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing became famous. He became the 4th most popular genius and the son of Oracle. Ji Tianxing's behavior proved that Lu Li's efforts were ineffective. Ji Tianxing didn't take Lu Li seriously at all. The sense of failure and humiliation made Lu Li too ashamed to stay at the Mount of Canonization. He wanted to leave at once. Lu Li looked at Jiang Ningxue and the other geniuses of the Empire of Thousand Snow and said, "The pilgrimage is over. It is not suitable for me to stay at the Mount of Canonization. I will go back to my country soon. Stay at the Mount of Canonization and keep a close eye on Ji Tianxing. Try your best to monitor his every move and find a chance to report to me." The young geniuses nodded. Only Jiang Ningxue seemed to be hesitating. Luli looked at her calmly and said, Schwerer, Ji Tianxing is cunning and cunning. You don't have to get close to him in case you get hurt. You just need to cultivate and work hard to improve your abilities. I will go back and report to my father. I will find a way to deal with him. Jiang Mingxue immediately let out a sigh of relief. She nodded and said, Shui, will remember your highness order. I won't let you down. Luli couldn't help but frown when he heard these words that sounded a little distant. He stared at Jiang Mingxue and observed her for a while. Then he noticed something. In the past, Jiang Mingxue was deeply in love with him. When she looked at him, her eyes were always filled with tenderness and shyness. But now, Jiang Mingxue's eyes were calm and cold, without a trace of affection. How shrewd was Luli! He understood that Jiang Mingxue was still angry about what had happened before. Her affection for him had faded a lot. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but send a voice transmission to her. Sure, don't take what happened before to heart. I couldn't disobey the emperor's orders and had no other choice. Jiang Mingxue didn't appreciate it. She cupped her hands and saluted him. With a cold expression, she said, Your Highness, you worry too much. As a citizen of the Thousand Snow Empire, Schwerer should serve the country. Luli frowned. He wanted to say something more, but he didn't know where to start. In the end, he could only sigh silently and leave the square with Manager Fong, the maids, and the guards. Not long afterward, Luli left the Mount of Investiture with the guards of honor in great numbers. Jiang Mingxue went back to the Palace of Thousand Snow. Sitting alone in the secret chamber, she was restless and could not calm down. Her mind was in a mess. Various pictures kept popping up in her mind. Luli used a honey trap to force her to get close to Ji Tianxing. She also saw Ji Tianxing walking around the garden with her and having a heart-to-heart talk with her. More than that, she saw how Ji Tianxing crushed the talents of the Chu Yun Empire and Qian Feiyang in a domineering manner. For some reason, Ji Tianxing's handsome and upright figure, his imposing manner and manner of looking down at the world, were deeply engraved in her mind. She could not erase them. In the depth of her mind, she even had a strange idea. Luli is much weaker than Ji Tianxing in terms of tactics, means, abilities, and behavior. Their imposing manner and manners are incomparable. I love Luli deeply, but for the order of the Holy Emperor, in order to realize his ambition and hegemony, he is willing to sacrifice me to Ji Tianxing. In comparison, with Ji Tianxing's style of doing things, he would never push his woman into another man's arms. After this incident, Jiang Mingxue was deeply disappointed in Luli. But for Ji Tianxing, she developed some feelings and admiration. As soon as Ji Tianxing returned to the Chamber of Divine Books, he saw a second guardian waiting for him at the door. Have you been serving Luli well these days at the Hall of Tranquility? Second guardian looked at him indifferently and asked in a low voice. Ji Tianxing paused for a moment. He glanced at her and nodded expressionlessly. The coldness in second protector's eyes softened a bit. He advised Luli earnestly, even though you are not ambitious and you are not talented enough, you must know how to judge the situation. If you can gain Luli's favor and guidance, you will benefit a lot. If you continue to muddle along like this, you will not be able to pass the test in a few months. By then, not only will you not be able to become a disciple, you will also fail to live up to His Highness cultivation. Ji Tianxing said calmly, If there is nothing else, I will take my leave now. Seeing that Luli did not listen to her advice and was even impatient, second guardian frowned with displeasure. Her eyes became cold and dignified again. Truly, rottenwood can't be carved. How disappointing. Let me ask you, did the worship ceremony go well? Ji Tianxing did not want to say more. He gave a brief answer. Everything went well. Luli has left. Second guardian nodded, waved her hand, and said, Then you can leave now. I will call you if I need you. Ji Tianxing turned around and went back to the secret chamber. The second protector looked at his back as he left. His eyes flashed with disappointment as he muttered to himself, What an ungrateful fellow. I really don't know how a guy like him, who has neither talent nor ambition, can get His Highness care. With that said, she shook her head and disappeared into the darkness. Ji Tianxing went back to the secret chamber. He quietly channeled his energy to regulate his breathing and recover his consumed mana. 6 hours later, it was evening. His mana was fully recovered, so he ended his cultivation. At this time, a young man's voice came from outside the secret chamber. "Young Master Ji, can you show yourself?" When Ji Tianxing heard this familiar voice, he stood up and walked out of the secret chamber. At the door stood a young man in a white robe. He was more beautiful than a girl. It was Endless Void. "Why are you here?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked. Endless Void smiled and explained, "Even though I cannot enter the Divine Book Pavilion without permission, I am only here to visit you. I'm not here to read the books. I am here to see you and congratulate you. After today, you will be the most dazzling talent of the Mount of Gods. You have overshadowed the other 3 geniuses. Your future is limitless." Ji Tianxing did not try to be humble. He just nodded with a smile. Endless Void continued. "Also, I am here to remind you of something. Today, you taught all the geniuses of the Chu Yun Empire a lesson." Chapter 1542. In Wu Kei's reminder warmed Ji Tianxing's heart. He smiled and nodded. "Thank you for your reminder. I know what I'm doing. No matter how much the Chu Yun Empire hates me, they wouldn't go so far as to kill me at Mount God Bestowment, right?" In Wu Kei smiled and shook his head. They wouldn't go that far. Not to mention the powers behind Lan Yiqing and Kuang Long. Even the Chu Yun Saint Emperor wouldn't cause trouble at Mount God Bestowment. However, you won't be able to stay at Mount God Bestowment forever. Once you leave Mount God Bestowment, you'll be in danger. Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, "Let's talk about the future in the future. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. You, on the other hand, are the only friend I can trust. Thank you for your concern and reminder." Hearing this, In Wu Kei's body trembled. He was obviously stunned. Soon after, a smile appeared on his beautiful face. He asked excitedly, "Young Master Ji, you're willing to be friends with me? You're willing to accept me?" Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. After receiving his confirmation, In Wu Kei became even more excited. He was so excited that his eyes shone brightly. "That's great. I knew that you'd be moved by my sincerity sooner or later." Ji Tianxing thought for a while, then took out a jade slip from his interspatial ring and handed it to In Wu Quebec. "This jade slip is for you. Take it as a gift for our first meeting." "You actually prepared a gift for me?" In Wu Kei was so happy that his eyes narrowed. He quickly took the jade slip and looked at it. He asked curiously, "Young Master Ji, what is this jade slip?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, "Previously, I saw that you used the yin-yang umbrella as your natal magic treasure. There seem to be some problems with your cultivation technique, causing you to be shackled. Your strength hasn't improved for a long time." In Wu Kei's eyes widened in disbelief. He asked in shock, "Young Master Ji, you can even see that? The cultivation technique I'm cultivating is a divine cultivation technique passed down in my Flower Moon Palace. It's a pity that every disciple who cultivates this cultivation technique will encounter the same shackles and obstacles." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "So, I found a limitless yin-yang and gave it to you. This cultivation method is most suitable for you to cultivate. It's definitely not any weaker than the cultivation methods of your Flower Moon Palace. However, the content of the technique is somewhat obscure and difficult to understand. It is a very ancient secret technique. It may be difficult for you to practice it at the beginning. But if you persevere in your cultivation, with your talent and comprehension, I believe you will soon see results. Our Flower Moon Palace's ancestral divine art is a high-grade tribulation level technique." In Wu Kei was astonished. He thought to himself, could the yin-yang limitless art that Mr. Ji gave me be a tribulation level divine art? As soon as he thought of this, he hurriedly handed the jade slip back to Ji Tianxing. "Young Master Ji, this is a supreme grade tribulation level cultivation technique. It's a priceless divine technique. I can't accept such a valuable gift." Ji Tianxing was startled. He did not expect that In Wu Kei would not accept such a precious technique. He wanted to laugh in his heart and thought, A supreme-grade tribulation-level divine art is indeed a priceless treasure. In the divine library, only God disciples have the right to borrow it. Just this, and Wu-Ke does not dare to accept it. If he knew that this cultivation technique is not a tribulation-level technique, but a true saint-level technique, I wonder what he would think. This Yang limitless art was a cultivation technique that he had specially chosen for Wu Quebec. In the divine library, there were tens of thousands of ancient books that Kenshin had collected. Among them, there were more than 30,000 different divine arts and secret techniques. The worst of them was a saint-level technique, and there were many god-level techniques. Because of this, the divine library of the Clear Sky Pagoda was not worth mentioning in his eyes. The cultivation techniques and secret techniques that were stored there were all trash. He looked at Wu-Ke and said seriously, "I have no reason to take back the gift that I have given you. If you don't want to accept this cultivation technique, then I will take it back. There is no need for us to be friends." As he said that, he stretched out his hand to take the jade bamboo scroll. Wu-Ke's expression changed. With a whoosh, he kept the jade bamboo scroll into his interspatial ring. He laughed awkwardly and said, "Young Master Ji, why are you always so overbearing?" Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. He thought about it seriously and said sincerely, "Maybe it is because I am more handsome." Wu-Ke was speechless. He rolled his eyes at Ji and Shu. "Young Master Ji, I will accept your gift. I will work hard in my cultivation and will not disappoint you." He clasped his hands at Ji Tianqing and said goodbye with a smile. Ji Tianqing nodded and watched as Wu-Ke turned and left. After Wu-Ke left, Ji and Shu returned to the secret room and continued to cultivate. After the oracle and the public challenge, Ji Tianqing had become the most famous person on Mount God Bestowment. He wanted to cultivate quietly in the divine library and try his best to break through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm. However, the divine library was not destined to be peaceful. Early the next morning, Lin Daoyi quickly ascended the Clear Sky Pagoda and arrived at the divine library. Just as he entered the divine book pavilion, a black figure appeared out of thin air in front of him, blocking his path. "Lin Daoyi, what are you doing here at the divine library?" Hearing the hoarse voice, Lin Daoyi raised his head to look at the black figure. He saw the black-robed second protector staring at him coldly. He clasped his hands at the second protector and explained, "Greetings, second protector. I am here at the divine library on the orders of the great protector to find Ji Tianqing." The second protector frowned. His murky eyes flashed with anger. He shouted, "What did that kid do wrong again? Did he offend Lu Li in the Hall of Tranquility?" This sentence stunned Lin Daoyi. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. He stared at the second protector with a strange expression. "What are you talking about, second protector? Ji Tianqing is a peerless genius. It is not a big deal to offend Lu Li. What is there to offend?" The second protector confirmed his guess. He said coldly, "What peerless genius? He is just a blockhead. This kid is really unrepentant. Instead of serving Lu Li well, he dares to offend him. Lin Daoyi, report to the second protector later. Ask him to punish Ji Tianqing severely. Teach this kid a painful lesson." Seeing the anger between the second protector's eyebrows, Lin Daoyi's expression became even more strange. "Second protector, you should tell the great protector about this matter yourself. I am just following orders." "Excuse me." With that, he ignored the second protector and walked toward Ji Tianqing's secret chamber. The second protector was confused. He felt that Lin Daoyi was acting strange, so he followed him. After a while, Lin Daoyi came to the door of the secret chamber and shouted seriously, "Ji Tianqing, I am Lin Daoyi. I have something to ask of you." The second protector frowned and sneered. "You don't have to be so polite to a punished criminal." Chapter 1543. Second Guardian's tone was impatient and his attitude was cold. Lin Daoyi felt something was wrong and frowned. But his status was one level lower than Second Guardian's, so he could not say anything. They waited for a while before the stone door of the secret chamber was opened. Ji Tianqing walked out. He glanced at Second Guardian with a straight face and asked, "What is it?" Second Protector glared at him coldly and shouted, "Yesterday, I asked you if you were serving Luli well. How dare you lie to me? I was right about you, rotten wood. You didn't disappoint me. Oracle Lin is here on the order of the Great Guardian. What have you done? Accept your punishment." Ji Tianxing frowned. He looked at Second Guardian indifferently and asked, "Second Guardian, I don't think I have offended you. How dare you?" Second Guardian sneered with disdain. "What is your relationship with Lu Li? Is he your son?" Ji Tianxing asked again. Second Guardian frowned and scolded in a deep voice, "Bastard! Don't talk nonsense." Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile. "If that's not the case, then why are you protecting him?" Second Guardian sneered and said, "Lu Li is humble and polite. He is talented. He is diligent in cultivation. He is such a talented disciple. If I don't protect him, am I supposed to protect you, Rottenwood?" When Lin Dowie saw that the two of them were about to quarrel, he hurriedly stepped in to mediate the situation. "Cough, cough. Please don't be angry. I am here for Ji Tianxing. Please let me get down to business." Only then did Second Guardian stop. He did not want to talk to Ji Tianxing anymore. Ji Tianxing did not want to talk to her either. He looked at Lin Dowie and asked, "Oracle Lin, what is it?" Lin Dowie cupped his hands toward him and quickly said, "Ji Tianxing, the Great Guardian and several divine envoys have discussed and decided to revoke your punishment. From today onwards, you don't have to stay in the Divine Book Pavilion to clean. You can leave." Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, "No need. I feel that the Divine Book Pavilion is quite good. It is quiet here and very suitable for my cultivation." Lin Dowie wasn't surprised by his reaction at all. Instead, he looked worried. "Tianxing, I know that the Grand Guardian's punishment of you has indeed caused you to be wronged and your reputation to be tarnished. But you don't have to take it to heart. The Great Protector isn't targeting you. He's just handling things impartially. Now that the Great Guardian has revoked your punishment and given you a way out, why don't you take a step back as well? This is good for everyone." Ji Tianxing shook his head and said indifferently, "Oracle Lin, you've misunderstood. I'm used to living in the Divine Book Pavilion. I really don't want to leave." Sigh. Lin Dowie sighed helplessly and said with a bitter smile, "Ji Tianxing, I understand your personality. Why do you have to do this? It won't be good for anyone if things get ugly." Ji Tianxing couldn't be bothered to explain. He stretched out his hand and said, "Please go back." Lin Dowie knew that he couldn't persuade him. He could only turn and leave to report to the Great Guardian. The Second Guardian stood at the side and witnessed the entire process. She looked at the departing Lin Dowie and frowned at Ji Tianxing. A trace of confusion flashed across her eyes. What's going on with these two guys? Why did the Great Guardian revoke his punishment for no reason? Didn't he make a mistake and get punished by the Great Guardian? She wanted to ask Ji Tianxing what was going on, but Ji Tianxing didn't. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing didn't even look at her. He turned and returned to the secret chamber and closed the stone door. She could only suppress her confusion and turn to leave. At the peak of Mount God, in a magnificent palace, in a spacious and bright study, the Great Guardian stood in front of the window and looked at the sea of clouds outside. He was thinking about something. At this moment, footsteps were heard at the door. A middle-aged man in a purple robe walked quickly into the study. The Great Guardian quickly turned and looked at the man in the purple robe. He asked with a dignified expression, "Lin Dowie, have you delivered my message?" Lin Dowie nodded. He looked a little hesitant, as if he wanted to say something. The Great Guardian glanced at him and frowned in confusion. He asked, "Where's Ji Tianxing? Why didn't you bring him here?" Lin Dowie had to tell the truth. He cupped his hands and reported, "Great Guardian, I've delivered your message. However, Ji Tianxing said that he's used to living in the Divine Book Pavilion. It's quiet and more suitable for cultivation. He doesn't want to leave." The Great Guardian's white eyebrows were tightly knitted. He looked both angry and amused. "This bastard is still angry with me because of what happened before. If he doesn't want to leave, do you want me to invite him personally?" Lin Dowie was also full of worry. He reminded in a low voice, "Great Guardian, His Highness protected Ji Tianxing. Now, Ji Tianxing has gained the Divine Master's favor and become the Son of God. We must nurture him with all our strength. Otherwise, no one can bear the blame when the Divine Master blames us. The truth is that the worship ceremony was a misunderstanding. We can't let the Son of God bear the blame and continue to be punished in the Divine Book Pavilion. The great guardian nodded solemnly. Of course, I understand this logic. Speaking of that incident, I didn't deliberately target him. It's just that I've always been strict in enforcing the law and will never allow anyone to offend the Divine Master's dignity. If I don't punish him severely, many followers will follow suit, and it will definitely affect the Divine Master's prestige. Sigh, it's probably because I personally punished him and whipped him in front of everyone. That's why he has complaints in his heart. The great guardian also realized that his methods back then were a little too harsh and overboard. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind. He waved his sleeves and said in a low voice, "Fine, since he doesn't want to take advantage of this situation, I'll go to the Divine Book Pavilion personally to invite him. Also, Lin Dowie, bring some people to tidy up the Heaven Saint Palace. Make sure it's properly tidied up and wait for Ji Tianxing to move in." With that, the great guardian was about to leave the study. Lin Dowie was stunned for a moment. He asked in disbelief, "Great guardian, you're really going to invite him personally? If this matter gets out, I'm afraid it'll affect your prestige." The great guardian smiled nonchalantly and waved his hand. "I was once the Son of God. The Divine Master personally appointed me as the great guardian of the tower. Who dares to criticize me? Moreover, I have always been impartial, and strict. Right is right, and wrong is wrong. Since I've misunderstood him and done something wrong, it's only right for me to apologize to him." After hearing his words, Lin Dowie was instantly filled with respect. He said sincerely, "The great guardian is indeed noble and magnanimous. You're truly a role model for our generation." The great guardian shook his head and said in a low voice, "You don't have to flatter me. I'm not as magnanimous as you make me out to be. The main reason is because Ji Tianxing has obtained the Divine Master's favor. He's the Son of God, the pride of the future. That's why I can treat him like this." Chapter 1544. At the Chamber of Divine Books. In a dark corner by the door, Second Guardian was resting on a jade chair with her eyes closed. On the surface, she looked like she was taking a nap. In fact, she was silently practicing a special kind of martial art. All of a sudden, heavy footsteps came from the door. A burly, white-haired elder in a silver robe stepped into the Divine Book Pavilion. Hearing the sound, Second Guardian opened her eyes at once. When she saw the man's face, she was confused. She hurried to greet him. "Great Guardian, why are you here at the Chamber of Divine Books?" It was the Great Guardian. He glanced at Second Guardian and then looked around. Calmly, he said, "I am here at the Chamber of Divine Books for business." Second Guardian thought to herself, usually if there was nothing important, Great Guardian would not come here even once in a few years. Not long after Lin Dowie left, Great Guardian came. This was too much of a coincidence. Therefore, she asked tentatively, "Are you here for Ji Tianxing?" Great Guardian did not hide anything. He nodded and said, "Yes." "Where does he live? Take me to him." "It's in the secret room over there." Second Protector hurriedly led him to Ji Tianxing's secret room. On the way, she could not help but ask, "Great Guardian, what did Ji Tianxing do to make you come to him in person? Made a mistake?" The Great Guardian frowned and glanced at her with a strange expression. Second Guardian did not notice anything wrong. She continued to ask, "Did Ji Tianxing offend Luli? I have seen it. This guy is not ambitious and he's not talented. We gave him a chance to improve, but he did not know how to take advantage of it. He even dared to offend Luli. This guy is such a blockhead." Great Guardian listened to her nagging. His expression became strange. He asked in a low voice, "Second Guardian, do you have some misunderstanding about Ji Tianxing? Luli is good, but how can he be compared with Ji Tianxing?" The Second Guardian's body stiffened and his eyes were filled with doubt. "Great Guardian, aren't you saying the wrong thing? How could a piece of rotten wood like Ji Tianxing compare with Luli? Back then, I was not the only one who thought highly of Luli. Didn't you also think highly of him and tried your best to cultivate him?" The corners of the Great Protector's mouth twitched involuntarily, and his expression became increasingly strange. He wanted to explain, but when he reached the door of the secret chamber, he shouted, "Ji Tianxing, I have something to tell you. Come out and meet me." A majestic and vigorous voice passed through the stone door and into the secret room. After saying that, the Great Protector stood outside the door and waited quietly. The second guardian had some doubts in his heart, so he stood to the side and watched coldly. After a while, the stone door of the secret chamber opened, and Ji Tianxing slowly walked out. "I only want to cultivate peacefully in the Divine Book Pavilion, but you guys keep disturbing my cultivation time and time again." He frowned slightly, as if he was unhappy that his cultivation was interrupted. Seeing him like this, the second guardian glared at him and scolded, "Ji Tianxing, don't be rude. The Great Protector is here in person. Why don't you salute and admit your guilt?" Before Ji Tianxing could say anything, the Great Protector glanced at her and said in a deep voice, "Second guardian, this has nothing to do with you. Don't talk too much." The second guardian was stunned for a moment. A glint of shame and anger flashed through her eyes. She never expected that the Great Protector would not save her face and scold her in front of Ji Tianxing. However, it was inappropriate for her to argue with the Great Protector. She had to suppress her shame and anger and looked at Ji Tianxing coldly. The Great Protector looked at Ji Tianxing seriously and said in a solemn tone, "Ji Tianxing, I have come here in person for two things. First, the matter of the worship ceremony was due to my negligence. I made an arbitrary conclusion, which led to the misunderstanding. Regarding this matter, I would like to apologize to you in person. I hope you won't take it to heart." After he finished speaking, he formally raised his palms and cupped his hands towards Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing looked at him calmly and did not say anything. However, the coldness in his eyes faded a lot. The second guardian was watching from the side. She was dumbfounded and her eyes were wide open. What's going on? Great Protector, why are you apologizing to him? You even saluted him? What does this kid do to deserve your apology?" The second guardian's tone was full of shock and confusion. Her calm state of mind was messed up on the spot. However, the Great Protector did not explain at all. He turned to glare at her and shouted in a deep voice, "Second guardian, please be quiet. Don't disturb my business." After being scolded again, the second guardian seemed to wake up from a dream and quickly shut her mouth. However, the shock and confusion in her heart were about to explode. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would never believe that the Great Protector would salute and apologize to someone who had committed a crime. The most important thing was that this person who had committed a crime was of low status, low aptitude, and a blockhead who did not want to improve himself. At this time, the Great Protector said to Ji Tianxing, "Second, I have decided to revoke your punishment. You don't need to stay in the Divine Book Pavilion anymore. I know that you need a quiet place to cultivate. Therefore, I have sent people to clean up the Heaven Saint Palace. In the future, that will be your cave abode. You can move there to live and cultivate." Hearing this, the second guardian was dumbfounded again. His light green eyes widened, revealing a look of deep astonishment. She could not believe that the Great Protector valued and protected Ji Tianxing so much that he had bestowed the Heaven Saint Palace to him as his cave abode. The Heaven Saint Palace was located at the peak of God Bestowment Mountain. Among the many palaces, it was the palace with the most abundant spiritual energy. It was the most suitable place for cultivation. Furthermore, one could occasionally receive divine light from the God Nation, which could greatly increase one's strength. It was not an exaggeration to say that not only did all the God disciples dream of living in the Heaven Saint Palace, but even the God envoys and the Great Protectors wanted to live there. However, the Heaven Saint Palace had always been empty. No one lived there. Only the children of God who were favored by the God Master, or the God Master's sons and princesses, were qualified to live there. The second guardian could not understand why the Great Protector had bestowed the Heaven Saint Palace to Ji Tianxing. Why? Was the Great Protector crazy? Incomparable confusion and shock caused her hands, which were hidden in her sleeves, to tremble uncontrollably. However, she could only endure it. She did her best to endure and did not dare to interrupt the Great Protector. In fact, Ji Tianxing did not bear a grudge against the Great Protector. In the past 2 months, he had already understood that the Great Protector was a fair and impartial person. He was very strict in handling matters. If there was a grudge in his heart, it was because the Great Protector had sentenced him to 70 lashes. This punishment was too harsh. However, the Great Protector had personally come to the Divine Book Pavilion to invite him. He had even bowed and apologized in person. This showed that he was very sincere. In addition, the Great Protector had revoked his punishment and had even bestowed the Heaven Saint Palace to him as his cave abode. Chapter 1545. Seeing that Ji Tianxing had finally agreed, the head guardian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Ji Tianxing and continued, "It's best that you can understand my good intentions. From now on, you will move to the Heaven Saint Palace, but the Divine Book Pavilion will still be open to you. You can enter and exit freely at any time. In addition, I have a token here that you deserve as well. With this token, you can freely enter and exit the God Bestowment Mountain, the various palaces, forbidden grounds, and the clear sky pagoda." As he spoke, a golden light flashed in the head guardian's hand, and a palm-sized token with a golden dragon engraved on it appeared. This token was very exquisite and beautiful. A golden dragon was engraved on the front, and 2 ancient words were engraved on the back. They were the words "Great Sky." Not only was the token made of special material comparable to a top-notch sage artifact, but it also contained a mysterious and powerful aura. That aura was like that of a god, dignified and sacred, making people revere it. When the second guardian saw this token, she was in a mess, and her eyes shone brightly. She could no longer hold back her confusion and shock as she exclaimed, "The God's Son token? Oh my God! Head Guardian, you actually took out the God's Son token and want to give it to Ji Tianxing." Since ancient times, only the Son of God who is favored by the Divine Master, as well as the Divine Master's outstanding descendants, could possess the God's Son token. Our Clear Sky Pagoda only keeps one God's Son token for the future Son of God. Head Guardian, you actually want to give the God's Son token to Ji Tianxing so carelessly? Are you crazy? Or am I muddle-headed? Ever since the Head Guardian had entered the Divine Book Pavilion, he had done many things that shocked the second Guardian. Now, he even wanted to give the God's Son token to Ji Tianxing. This made the second Guardian completely lose her composure. She no longer had her usual cold and indifferent temperament, and her tone was agitated as she questioned. She was just short of jumping up and down. Ji Tianxing and the Head Guardian both turned to look at the second Guardian. One of them had an indifferent expression, while the other had a strange expression. Neither of them spoke. One was too lazy to explain, while the other disdained to speak. Ji Tianxing took the Godchild token and put it away. He cupped his hands at the Great Guardian and said, "Thank you, Great Guardian." The Great Protector said, "Pack up and prepare. This seat will bring you to the Heaven Saint Palace now." "I have nothing to pack. I can leave at any time," Ji Tianxing replied calmly. "Then let's go." The Great Protector nodded and led him away. Even after the two of them left the Divine Book Pavilion and disappeared outside the door, the second Protector was still stunned outside the door. How could this be? What did Ji Tianxing do? He had actually made the Great Guardian value him so highly that he had even given him the deity token? Could it be that Ji Tianxing had gained the favor of the Lord of Gods and attracted the oracle to descend? This was impossible. How could someone like him, who was so unambitious, receive an oracle? If even he can get the oracle, then at least half of the geniuses in the various countries can become the children of oracle. The second Protector murmured in a daze. Her eyes changed wildly, like a crazy old woman. It was a pity that Ji Tianxing and the Great Protector had both left. No one had explained the reason to her. She had always stayed in the Divine Book Pavilion and had not left the Clear Sky Pagoda for many years. She also did not know what had happened outside. Incomparable doubts and shock filled her heart, but she could not find an answer. There were more than 30 palaces of various sizes at the peak of the God-Sealing Mountain. The arrangement of these palaces corresponded to the positions of the 36 Big Dipper stars, containing the profound and unfathomable truths of heaven and earth. In the center of the 30 palaces was the sacred and majestic Clear Sky Pagoda. This was the divine pagoda closest to the divine nations and also the holy land of the 6 great empires. Behind the Clear Sky Pagoda, there was a vast palace 10,000 feet away. It was the Heaven Saint Palace. This palace occupied an area of 2.5 miles. It was built to be rather vast and majestic. The palace was dazzling and resplendent. Everywhere was exquisite, luxurious, and sacred, just like a heavenly palace. The great protector brought Ji Tianxing to the entrance of the Heaven Saint Palace and then turned to leave. Lin Daoi was already waiting at the entrance. When he saw Ji Tianxing arrive, he led him into the palace. As the two of them walked deeper into the palace, Lin Daoi introduced him to the situation of the Heaven Saint Palace. The Heaven Saint Palace has been idle for many years. Only the descendant of the Son of God and the Divine Master can stay here. Previously, His Highness Jiao stayed in this palace. The Heaven Saint Palace occupies an area of 2.5 miles. It is truly vast, so it is divided into 4 courtyards: the east, south, west, and north. Previously, His Highness Jiao stayed in the north courtyard. The Great Protector arranged for you to stay in the east courtyard. There are hundreds of guards and maids waiting at your beck and call. In addition, the Heaven Saint Palace has a divine great array that can draw the Heaven-Earth Spirit Chi in a radius of 100,000 miles and gather it in the secret rooms of the 4 courtyards. Those 4 secret rooms have powerful ancient divine arrays that can change the flow of time. In the secret room of the East Courtyard, the flow of time is 5 times that of the outside world. If you cultivate in the secret room for 5 days, only 1 day will pass in the outside world. At this point, Lin Daoi revealed a smile and said emotionally, "The most heaven-defying things in the Heaven Saint Palace are those 4 secret rooms. They can actually change the flow of time. It is simply the work of a god. Not to mention the god disciples. Even I and the other great protectors yearn for those 4 secret rooms." He had originally thought that Ji Tianxing would be wild with excitement after hearing this. After all, a secret room that could increase one's cultivation speed by 5 times was something that even martial saints yearned for. However, he discovered that Ji Tianxing's expression was calm. He only smiled and nodded, not making any comments. This made him very suspicious. Did Ji Tianxing not understand the meaning of time acceleration, or had he already seen such a miracle? The two of them passed through the corridor and garden and stepped into the east courtyard. Lin Daoi continued, "Ji Tianxing, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Heaven Saint Palace is about 5 times that of the outside world. If you cultivate in the secret room, your cultivation speed will increase by at least a few times. Furthermore, the secret room has a large amount of spirit pills, primordial spirit pills, and various cultivation resources. You can use them as you wish. On the God Bestowment Mountain, the Son of God has an extremely high status and authority. He will also have the most abundant cultivation resources. Therefore, after you enter the Heaven Saint Palace, you only need to concentrate on cultivating. All the trivial matters will be handled by the maids and guards. If there is nothing important, no one will disturb you. If you really encounter something important, I will personally inform you." After Lin Daoi explained in detail, Ji Tianxing basically understood the situation in the Heaven Saint Palace. He sent Lin Daoi away and strolled alone in the east courtyard, admiring the beautiful scenery. After walking around, he discovered that the situation was just as Lin Daoi had said. The Heaven Saint Palace was really a holy land for cultivation. He thought to himself, "Originally, with my cultivation speed, I would need at least a few years to break through to the 6th level of the primordial spirit realm." Chapter 1546. A few days after Ji Tianxing moved into the Heaven Saint Palace, the news spread out. When the geniuses from the various countries heard about this, they were all extremely envious and jealous. Only a few people had heard of the Heaven Saint Palace, and knew that it was a sacred cultivation ground on Mount God Bestowment. Only the god's sons and princesses could stay there. Most people did not know about the Heaven Saint Palace, but now that they heard about its holiness and uniqueness, their eyes turned red with jealousy. For a few days, the geniuses from the various countries could not calm down as they vied to discuss this matter. But everyone knew that it was useless to be jealous. Ji Tianxing was the son of God, and staying in the Heaven Saint Palace was his reward. Qin Sangxiong, Song Zhanyu, and Jiang Ningxue were secretly anxious and worried. They knew that after Ji Tianxing moved into the Heaven Saint Palace, his strength would increase several times faster. They could only cultivate harder and work harder to increase their strength so that they would not be surpassed by Ji Tianxing in the God-disciple test in a few months. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. In this half a month, Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret chamber. The secret chamber in the East Court did not disappoint him. Not only was the heaven and earth spirit qi extremely rich, but also stored a huge amount of spirit stones, elixirs, and other resources. Furthermore, the ancient divine array in the secret chamber was operating, and the flow of time was 5 times faster than the outside world. Only half a month had passed in the outside world, but he had already cultivated in the secret chamber for more than 70 days. The results of this cultivation were remarkable. His strength had increased again, and he was even closer to the 6th level of the Essence Soul realm. Furthermore, he had finally comprehended the essence of the 6th Sword of the Burial of Heaven, and finally mastered the Broken Moon Sword. The power and exquisiteness of the Broken Moon Sword far exceeded the previous 5 sword moves. If a godly realm expert used this move, he would be able to split the moon in half. It was extremely powerful. To test the power of this sword move, Ji Tianxing entered Kenshin's tomb with his primordial spirit. He flew to the edge of the dark space, condensed a golden sword with his dermic powers, and used the Broken Moon Sword. A 1,000-foot-long sword beam slashed out and struck the gray fog, creating a blank area of dozens of miles in the fog. On the grayish-white ground, a large area of array patterns and veins naturally appeared. The empty space was already close to 200 miles in radius. Countless array patterns and profundities could be seen. However, this was only the tip of the iceberg. Ji Tianxing sighed in his heart. He wondered how big this ancient divine array was. What secrets were they hiding? After he finished cultivating, he got up and left the secret room. The golden armored guard guarding the door immediately bowed respectfully. He walked out of the east courtyard, passed through the garden and several corridors, and walked toward the center of the Heaven Saint Palace. The central area was the intersection of the east, south, west, and north courtyards. There was an ancient altar that was 300 meters tall. This pyramid-like altar was called the Holy Altar. Previously, Lin Daoi had reminded Ji Tianxing that this saint altar was the core of the Heaven Saint Palace and also the foundation of several god arrays. The Holy Altar had a very powerful effect that was comparable to the top sacred medicine in the world. If one cultivated on the Holy Altar, it could increase one's comprehension, aptitude, and potential in a short period of time. It could help a cultivator break through bottlenecks and shackles, breaking through to a higher realm. Especially for primordial soul realm cultivators, cultivating on the Holy Altar was the most beneficial. In addition, Tribulation Realm cultivators could also use the Holy Altar to increase their chances of successfully passing the tribulation. There is a saying in the martial world that less than 1 in 10 would survive the heavenly tribulation. This meant that Tribulation Realm cultivators had less than 1 in 10 chances of successfully passing the heavenly tribulation. Since ancient times, it was unknown how many outstanding martial arts geniuses had ultimately perished under the heavenly tribulation. Because of this, there were countless primordial soul realm cultivators in the world, but very few tribulation realm cultivators. Those who could successfully pass the 9th heavenly tribulation and reach the martial sage realm were even fewer. This holy altar could increase the chances of passing the heavenly tribulation. One could imagine how powerful its effect was. However, Ji Tianxing was heading to the holy altar for another reason. Previously, Lin Dowie had told him that every year, on the 15th day of March, June, September, and December, there might be a divine light shining from the kingdom of God and landing on the holy altar. It was said that it was a spiritual spring in the kingdom of God. Occasionally, the nine heavens spiritual liquid would leak out and turn into the rainbow divine light. The divine light had incredible effects. Not only could it increase one's cultivation, but it could also help one break through one or two realms. It also had powerful healing effects. Even if one's body was shattered after bathing in the divine light, one's body could be reconstructed. However, the divine light would only descend once a year on one of the 4 days. Today was the 15th day of March. Ji Tianxing decided to try his luck. If he was lucky enough to encounter the divine light, his cultivation could increase tremendously and he could break through to the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. 15 minutes later, he arrived at the bottom of the holy altar. He saw a dark golden holy altar that was 1,000 feet tall. It sat on a flat ground. Around the holy altar stood more than 30 statues of divine beasts. They formed a circle and guarded the holy altar. The holy altar was built with more than 10,000 boulders. There were all kinds of precious divine jade and gems in the middle. From the bottom of the holy altar to the top, there were a total of 99 steps. Each step was 10 feet tall. Ji Tianxing stepped onto the boulder steps and climbed up one step at a time. Moments later, he reached the top of the holy altar. Beneath his feet was a flat ground with a radius of 100 feet. The dark golden holy altar was engraved with a mysterious and ancient pattern. He could vaguely make out that it was 2 divine dragons spiraling in the air. He did not think too much about it. He sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to rest, waiting for the divine light to descend. At that moment, the morning sun had just risen. It scattered its golden rays, illuminating the entire holy altar in a dazzling golden light. The holy altar exuded an invisible, mysterious power that enveloped his body. It silently increased his perception, talent, and potential. He was prepared to meditate on the holy altar for a day. Even if the divine light did not descend, he could still use the holy altar's power to cultivate. However, after an hour, his cultivation was interrupted. A figure in a white robe climbed to the top of the holy altar and appeared behind him. Seeing him sitting on the holy altar and cultivating, the white-robed figure was clearly stunned. He asked instinctively, "Young man, who are you? Why are you here?" Hearing this question, Ji Tianxing slowly stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. He turned his head to take a look. Only then did he see that the person was an old man in a white robe with white hair and beard. The old man was not tall. He was slightly plump. His face was not dignified either. He looked rather kind and benevolent. Moreover, there was no anger or malice in the old man's eyes when he looked at him. He was just puzzled. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing replied to the white-robed old man, "My surname is Tianxing. My name is Tianxing. Of course, I'm here to wait for the divine light to descend." Chapter 1547. The white-robed elder's reply made Ji Tianxing frown slightly. "You know me?" The white-robed elder shook his head and smiled. "Of course not. Today is the first time I've seen you. However, half a month ago, the head protector greeted me and mentioned your name and deeds." Ji Tianxing was puzzled and asked, "May I ask who you are?" The white-robed elder stroked his beard and said with an amiable expression, "My surname is Hong, and my name is Qingtian. I was appointed by the Divine Master to guard the Clear Sky Pagoda. Now that I'm old, I've stepped down from my post and will be spending my remaining years in Heaven's Saint Palace." Hong Qingtian's tone was calm and indifferent, and his expression was carefree. Just from his expression and appearance, one could see that he was open-minded and broad-minded. However, Ji Tianxing's expression changed when he heard these words, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. "Hong Qingtian, you're the previous head protector, the current third protector of Heaven's Saint Palace?" Hong Qingtian looked at him in surprise and smiled. "You brat, you actually know about my past? Did Lin Dowie tell you?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, Divine Envoy Lin did not mention your deeds. I saw them in the books of the Divine Book Pavilion. Previously, when he had been in the Divine Book Pavilion, he had flipped through more than 300,000 books in order to quickly understand the situation of Shinwu continent. Coincidentally, there were dozens of books that mentioned Hong Qingtian. 1,000 years ago, Hong Qingtian had been a martial saint whose might had shaken the world. He had been highly regarded by Divine Master Tai Hao and had been appointed as the head protector of the Clear Sky Pagoda. However, several hundred years ago, Hong Qingtian had mysteriously disappeared for 10 years. When he had reappeared, he had returned to the Clear Sky Pagoda with serious injuries and had almost died. Although he had not lost his life and had luckily survived, his strength had not been restored. However, his strength was unable to recover, and his cultivation level was constantly falling. Since then, he had lived in seclusion on Godseal Mountain for decades, and there had been no trace of him. A few decades later, the third protector had broken through to the martial sage realm and was rewarded by the divine Lord Tai Hao. He was made the great protector of the Clear Sky Pagoda. As a result, Hong Qingtian and the three guardians' identities were swapped. The previous three protectors had become the current great protector, who was in charge of the entire God Bestowment Mountain. As for the great protector Hong Qingtian, he had become the current third protector, living in seclusion in the Heaven Saint Palace. More than a month ago, Ji Tianxing had read these stories in the book and paid special attention to them, so they were still fresh in his mind. At this moment, Hong Qingtian was right in front of him. He carefully sized him up and saw some clues. On the surface, Hong Qingtian looked hale and hearty, and his complexion was rather good. But in reality, his soul core was damaged, and his aura was obscure and weak. Obviously, he was heavily injured and had yet to recover. Even his strength had dropped from martial sage realm to cross calamity realm. Ji Tianxing could faintly feel that Hong Qingtian's strength might be comparable to the second guardian's, which was between the 7th and 8th level of the tribulation transcending realm. At this moment, Hong Qingtian looked at him kindly and said with a smile, You can be considered a legendary figure in God Bestowment Mountain. 2 months ago, you offended the Divine Master's dignity and incurred the Great Protector's punishment. You were sent to sweep the floor of the Divine Book Pavilion. Now, you have attracted the Oracle and become the son of Oracle, which only appears once every 200 years. You are now living in the Heaven Saint Palace. This experience of twists and turns is really exciting. After saying that, Hong Qingtian stroked his beard, and a sincere smile bloomed on his old face. Ji Tianxing could see that Hong Qingtian was open-minded and kind. He had a whole new level of respect for him, so his words were filled with admiration. Thus, he stood up and cupped his hands towards Hong Qingtian and Tianxing. Greetings to the third guardian. Hong Qingtian waved his hand and said with a smile, You don't have to be so formal, and you don't have to call me third guardian. Just call me Elder Hong. As he said that, he actually took the initiative to sit down cross-legged beside Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing did not stand on ceremony and sat side by side with him. They looked at the sky and the morning sun and chatted with interest. Elder Hong, why did you come to the holy altar today? Are you also waiting for the divine light? Hong Qingtian nodded and said with a faint smile, Yes, for so many years, I've come here 4 times a year, and I will definitely be baptized by the divine light once. Ji Tianxing thought for a while and asked, I heard that the divine light from the kingdom of God is most useful for warriors in the primordial soul realm and the tribulation realm. It has little effect on martial sages. You are baptized by the divine light every year. Could it be related to your injuries? Hong Qingtian tilted his head and looked at him. He said with a playful smile, You are really like what the rumors say. You are really free and unrestrained, and you do whatever you want. If it were other disciples or God's disciples, even if they knew, they would not dare to ask. You, on the other hand, are asking about this in front of me. Are you trying to expose my shortcomings? Although he said that, there was no hint of blame in his expression and tone. Ji Tianxing also showed a faint smile, and said with a calm tone, "Some people are humble, polite, and elegant on the surface, but in their hearts they are vicious, treacherous, and cunning. But I am different. Since I have nothing to ask for, there is no need for me to pretend. The reason why I am asking is because I am concerned about your injuries." Hong Qingtian looked at him and nodded sympathetically. You're so young, but you're quite experienced. You have a lot of insights. What you said is right. I have cultivated my body and mind in the Heaven Saint Palace for hundreds of years. Now, my state of mind is like water, and I have returned to my original state. Falling from the martial sage realm to the cross-calamity realm has allowed me to understand many things. You are very similar to me. Both of us are tired of deceit and scheming against each other. We would rather be straightforward with people than be hypocritical. As he spoke, he looked at the sky calmly with a faint smile on his face. The golden morning sun shone on his white robe and long hair, making him look like an otherworldly sage, an immortal in the clouds, with an ethereal temperament. He and Ji Tianxing felt like old friends when they met, and they hit it off. Thus, they started to chat. What happened back then is my biggest secret. Naturally, I cannot mention it to anyone. However, my injuries are too serious. My primordial spirit is injured, and I am still unable to heal it. All these years, I have been baptized by the divine light every year to suppress my injuries and prevent them from worsening. In addition, I have been studying the way of elixir pills to find a way to heal my injuries. If not for the help of the divine light, my skills would have deteriorated rapidly. After hundreds of years, I am afraid that I am not much stronger than you. After Ji Tianxing heard this, he frowned and thought for a while. Then he asked, "Elder Hong, can you tell me the situation of your primordial spirit injury, and what are the symptoms?" Chapter 1548. I know a little. Ji Tianxing smiled and said humbly. Hong Qingtian just smiled and did not comment. However, in his opinion, although Ji Tianxing was the son of God and a peerless genius, he was only an immortal soul cultivator. But Ji Tianxing only had essence soul realm strength after all. No matter how much he delved into the Tao of alchemy, how brilliant could he be? A martial artist's vision, knowledge, and methods were all limited by one's cultivation realm. A heaven-origin realm martial artist who spent his whole life studying the Tao of elixir could never surpass an immortal soul cultivator who knew a little about the Tao of elixir. You don't have to ask about my injuries. I've studied it for hundreds of years, but I can't save myself. Even if you know, what can you do? However, if you want to study the Tao of elixir, I can help you. If you encounter any problems in the future, come to me. I'll definitely answer them for you. Hong Qingtian looked at Ji Tianxing and said with a smile, "Although I've fallen to the tribulation realm, my Tao of elixir is second only to the famous elixir saints. It's not a problem for me to guide you." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Thank you, Elder Hong. If there's a chance in the future, I'll ask for your guidance. However, I still want to know about your injuries. Maybe we can brainstorm a way to treat it." Hong Qingtian looked at him with surprise and laughed involuntarily. "You little brat, you're really stubborn. You don't want to give up. Well, since you're so concerned about me, I'll let you take a look." As he said that, he extended his left hand and placed it in front of Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing understood what he meant. He extended his right hand and placed it on Hong Qingtian's wrist, releasing his divine sense to check his condition. If he could see Elder Hong's injuries, Elder Hong would tell him the specific symptoms. If he could not even see the basic condition of his injuries, there was no need to continue the discussion. Ji Tianxing closed his eyes and focused on urging his divine sense into Hong Qingtian's body to check his primordial spirit. Hong Qingtian trusted him completely and did not put up any defenses, allowing him to check his primordial spirit. Both of them were silent. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing slowly withdrew his right hand and opened his eyes. "What do you think?" Hong Qingtian looked at him with a faint smile. He nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, "The middle spirit is easy to damage. There are 5 disadvantages. If one of the 5 spirits is missing, the earth moves as if there is no movement. The 7 meridians are blocked, and the 3 souls are blocked. The smile on Hong Qingtian's face immediately disappeared and became solemn. After Ji Tianxing finished speaking, a look of surprise appeared on his face, and his eyes flashed with gratification. You do have some ability. No wonder you're so stubborn. You've been confident for a long time. You're right. You've already seen through about 80% of the injuries on my soul. With your attainments in the Tao of Alchemy, it's enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with ordinary tribulation-passing experts. It's really not easy. Hong Qingtian's expression was filled with admiration, and he was not stingy with his praise. Elder Hong, you flatter me. Ji Tianxing said humbly, and said with a serious expression, although I've seen through 80% of the injuries, the remaining 20% is the most important. Please tell me. Hong Qingtian thought he believed him, and said, ever since my soul was damaged, every time I entered the extreme realm, my 5 spirits would be in intense pain, as if they were about to break apart. Also, deep in my soul, there's a trace of a strange divine poison that's specially used to suppress the soul. After Hong Qingtian finished speaking, Ji Tianxing roughly understood what was going on. He remembered all of this in his heart, and said to Hong Qingtian, Elder Hong, I've read a few ancient medical books, and there are methods to treat similar injuries. If you're willing to believe me, why don't you give me a few days, and I'll be able to find a way to treat you. Hong Qingtian originally did not have much hope, and did not really believe that he could find a way. However, Ji Tianxing was the son of God, a genius favored by the Divine Master, and he did have some talent in the Tao of medicine. Hong Qingtian considered it for a moment, and then he smiled and nodded. Tianxing, I'm already very gratified and grateful that you're willing to do this. Just do what you can. No matter the result, I'll remember this favor. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, Elder Hong, you're exaggerating. I'm not doing this to make you owe me a favor. I'm only willing to do this because we hit it off. Hong Qingtian smiled and nodded, but he did not say anything else. Afterward, the two sat at the top of the sacred altar and began a chat. Hong Qingtian had been living in the west courtyard of Heaven's Saint Palace for over 100 years, and he had been lonely for far too long. To be able to meet such a peerless genius like Ji Tianxing, who shared similar interests, he and Ji Tianxing chatted happily. He talked about the past of Mount God Seal, the history of the Clear Sky Pagoda, the rise and fall of the 6 great empires, and the general situation of Shinwu continent. Hong Qingtian had once been a martial saint whose name had shaken the world, so he had naturally traveled the world. He had traveled all over Shinwu continent, and his knowledge was extensive. In the past, Ji Tianxing had only read about relevant records and stories in books. Now that he had heard Hong Qingtian's narration, he understood even more clearly. Unknowingly, an entire day passed. Even when the sun set and night fell, the divine light still did not descend upon the sacred altar. Ji Tianxing was somewhat disappointed. Hong Qingtian was already used to this, and he was not surprised. He even comforted Lu Yin. Don't worry, the divine light might descend in another 3 months. When night fell, the two bid each other farewell and left the sacred altar. Ji Tianxing returned to the east courtyard and entered a secret room. He sat cross-legged on the purple jade platform and began to meditate. He urged his primordial spirit into Kenshin's tomb and landed in front of the 18 black tombstones. The first tombstone on the right was the entrance to the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. He reached out and touched the tombstone, but he was immediately sucked into a separate space. In the next moment, he appeared in the vast sea of clouds, and beneath his feet was a white jade stone bridge. He crossed the stone bridge with ease and entered the Heavenly Tome Pavilion, where he began to look through the books and ancient books. What he had said to Hong Qingtian earlier was not an excuse. He had indeed seen a similar situation recorded in an ancient book in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. Moreover, the ancient books in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion were all rare treasures and cultivation techniques above the sage level. It could be said to be all-encompassing and all-encompassing. Hong Qingtian's primordial spirit was severely injured, and ordinary martial saints would not be able to treat it. However, he believed that he would definitely be able to find a corresponding treatment method in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. Time passed silently, and a day passed very quickly. In the heavenly tome pavilion, Ji Tianxing continuously looked through hundreds of sage-level medical books and alchemy books. Finally, when he finished reading half of the treatise on strange poisons, his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. That's right, it's this medical book, and the symptoms described are exactly the same as Elder Hong's. With a face full of joy, he held the treatise on strange poisons and left the heavenly tome pavilion. Chapter 1549. According to the records in the Book of Strange Poisons, the strange poison in Hong Qingtian's primordial spirit was an extremely rare evil poison. That evil poison did not belong to the three races of humans, demons, and demons. Instead, it came from a mysterious underground abyss. Because of this, Hong Qingtian had studied it for hundreds of years, but was still unable to cure it. Even if the Great Guardian was a martial saint, he could not heal him. After Ji Tianxing finished reading the medical book, he found that the treatment method recorded in the book was somewhat complicated. If he wanted to heal Hong Qingtian's injuries, not only did he have to take a heavenly crystal jade divine pill, he also had to use the earth core fire crystal and the outer Xianbing in a place with abundant 5 elements spiritual qi to heal for 3 years. Ji Tianxing put the medical book back and thought to himself, the earth core fire crystal and the outer Xianbing are both extremely precious materials. However, the clear sky pagoda controls the 6 nations and has endless resources and treasures. It should not be difficult to gather these 2 treasures. The most important thing is still the heavenly crystal jade divine pill, which requires 19 precious materials and a saint-grade pill furnace to refine. This is somewhat troublesome. He did not have the 19 precious materials nor a saint-grade pill furnace. If he wanted to refine the heavenly crystal jade divine pill, he could only go to Hong Qingtian. The next morning, he left the east courtyard and rushed to the west courtyard where Hong Qingtian lived. The west courtyard's architectural style and area were similar to the east courtyard. The difference was that Hong Qingtian lived alone in the west courtyard. There were only 2 guards guarding the door and 2 maids serving him. It was not like Ji Tianxing's east courtyard, which had more than 100 guards and maids. After Ji Tianxing explained the purpose of his visit to the Imperial Guard, the Imperial Guard led him into the western courtyard and arrived at a quiet courtyard. At this moment, the sun had risen and the golden sunlight shone on the house. Hong Qingtian, dressed in a white robe, was sitting on the roof of the palace, facing the morning sun and meditating quietly. His body seemed to have merged with the heavens and the earth. As he breathed, he swallowed the morning sun and stirred the clouds in the sky. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing could not help but reveal a smile, feeling admiration in his heart. With Elder Hong's cultivation and methods, he's really like the gods in the legends. He's able to feast on the sun and moon. He didn't say anything to disturb them. He stood quietly in the courtyard and waited. An hour later, Hong Qingtian finally finished his cultivation. He flew down from the roof and landed in the courtyard. Tianxing, why are you looking for this old man so early in the morning? Hong Qingtian put his left hand behind his back and stroked his beard with his right hand. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. After greeting him, he went straight to the point and said, Elder Hong, I have found a way to heal you, but I need your help. What? Hong Qingtian was shocked and said in disbelief, It's only been 1 night, and you already have a way to treat my injuries? Tianxing, if this old man didn't have some understanding of you, I would really suspect that you're making fun of this old man. Ji Tianxing knew that he was shocked and in disbelief. He didn't say anything more. He took out a piece of paper and handed it to Hong Qingtian. I need a saint-grade pill furnace to refine a celestial jade divine pill. These are the 19 materials needed to refine the pill. Elder Hong, please prepare them. In addition, Elder Hong also needs to prepare 9 pieces of earth core fire crystals and 12 pieces of outer space mysterious eyes for your healing. Hong Qingtian saw that he had a serious expression and spoke as if he were serious. He was even more shocked. He quickly took the paper and read it carefully. After he finished reading the 19 materials, his expression became even more serious. After frowning and weighing the pros and cons, he looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said, "Tianxing, this old man knows that you have good intentions. I also know that you're a peerless genius who has created many miracles. But this time, this old man really needs to consider carefully. Of course, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that these 19 materials, as well as the Earth Core Fire Crystals and the Outer Space Xian Bing, are all top treasures of heaven and earth. They're priceless. Not to mention an ordinary martial saint. Even an empire wouldn't be able to gather these materials in a short period of time." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. "I understand. These materials are all top treasures of heaven and earth. But with God's sealing mountains' power and foundation, it shouldn't be difficult to gather them." Hong Qingtian nodded and said, "That's right. Most of the materials are available in the Clear Sky Pagoda. The missing materials can also be gathered quickly. But this old man is spending so much of God's sealing mountains' wealth in order to heal my injuries. If I succeed, it'll be fine. But if I fail, this old man won't have the face to face the guardians, let alone the divine master." Ji Tianxing shook his head and comforted him with a smile. "Elder Hong, you worry too much. You were once the great guardian of the Clear Sky Pagoda and made great contributions to the divine master. Even if you take these treasures, it's only right. No one will be dissatisfied with you. In addition, I have an 80% chance of success. Please rest assured, Elder Hong." 80% chance? Hong Qingtian's eyes widened, revealing a look of great surprise. Ji Tianxing was startled for a moment and smiled embarrassedly. "After all, I don't dare to make any guarantees. I can only try my best. If I can break through to the tribulation stage, I'll have a 100% chance." Hong Qingtian was even more shocked. His old face was flushed, and he said excitedly, "No, you misunderstood. What I mean is that an 80% chance is already incredible. You brat. This old man still doesn't dare to believe it. Are you lying to this old man? Or are you this old man's lucky star? He was injured and lived in seclusion for hundreds of years. His strength was constantly declining. He tried everything to save himself, but he was powerless in the end. Now, Ji Tianxing brought him a glimmer of hope and dawn. Even if his state of mind was as calm as still water, he lost his composure at this moment. He couldn't believe it and felt like he was dreaming. Ji Tianxing understood his feelings and didn't say much. He only asked, "If there's no problem, then I'll take my leave first. Let me know when you've gathered the materials." After saying that, he said goodbye to Hong Qingtian and turned to leave the west courtyard. Hong Qingtian held the note in his hand and looked at his back as he left. His eyes were still shining with excitement. After a long time, he retracted his gaze and put away the notes solemnly. Is it a blessing or a curse? Even the divine master favors him. This old man will believe him this time and take a gamble. He murmured in a firm tone and hurriedly went to prepare the materials for alchemy. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianxing cultivated in the east courtyard for 5 days. On the morning of the 6th day, when he was cultivating in the secret chamber, a guard reported that the 3 guardians had come to look for him. Therefore, he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber and rushed to the study. Hong Qingtian was sitting in the study with a hint of exhaustion between his eyebrows. Obviously, he had put in a lot of effort to gather the materials for alchemy in the past few days. Seeing Ji Tianxing enter the study, Hong Qingtian greeted him and gave him a space ring. "Tianxing, I've already prepared the 19 materials to refine the Celestial Jade Divine Pill." Chapter 1550. Ji Tianxing was very clear on how precious those materials were. He originally thought that Hong Qingtian would need at least 10 days to half a month to barely gather them. He did not expect that in just a few days, Hong Qingtian had already gathered all the materials. He took the spatial ring and said to Hong Qingtian, "Elder Hong, to heal your primordial spirit, we mainly rely on the Celestial Jade Divine Pill. As for the Earth Core Fire Crystal and Outer Space Xian Bing, they're only there to assist in the treatment. We are not in a hurry." Hong Qingtian nodded to show that he understood. Then this old man can rest assured. Ji Tianqing said again, I have enough materials. I wonder if I can borrow Elder Hong's alchemy room? Hong Qingtian was stunned for a moment and said awkwardly, there is indeed an alchemy room in this old man's west courtyard. It's just that the cauldrons are all tribulation grade and not saint grade. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and said regretfully, I'm afraid that won't do. We need a saint-grade cauldron to successfully refine the celestial jade divine pill. Hong Qingtian thought for a moment and said, there's an unused burning sky palace on the cliff in the north. It was once the largest alchemy room on the mountain peak, and there was a saint-grade cauldron in it. However, 100 years ago, there was a problem with that saint-grade cauldron. I don't know what it is missing, but it has been unused until now. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a smile, it's fine as long as there is a saint-grade cauldron. I'll go take a look later. Hong Qingtian was a little worried and said, Tianqing, this old man checked that burning sky cauldron before, but I couldn't find out what the problem was and couldn't activate it. If you want to use that cauldron, you can go find the Great Guardian and let him check it for you. Maybe he can activate it successfully. Ji Tianqing nodded and did not say anything else. The two chatted for a while more before Hong Qingtian took his leave. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time and left the Heaven Saint Palace, heading straight for the Burning Sky Palace in the north. 15 minutes later, he passed through a dozen magnificent palaces and arrived outside the Burning Sky Palace. This was an ancient palace that stood at the edge of a cliff. It was dark red in color, and the roof was covered with fiery red glazed tiles. However, the square outside the palace was covered in dust, and the palace gates were tightly shut. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw no one inside or outside the palace. There were no maids or guards. He walked up the steps to the entrance of the palace. The 30-meter-tall palace gate was engraved with complicated patterns and patterns, forming a powerful defensive formation. The 4 huge bronze doorknobs were faintly mottled with rust. It was obvious that they had not been touched for many years. Ji Tianqing took out the deity token that the Great Guardian had given him and put it into the groove of the door knocker. Immediately, the array formation of the palace gate was activated and a dazzling 5-colored light shone. Along with a muffled creaking sound, the palace gate slowly opened to both sides. Ji Tianqing stepped through the door and entered the main hall of the Burning Sky Palace. When he stepped into the main hall, the originally dim palace was immediately lit up with dazzling lights. The surrounding walls were lit up with gemstone lamps, and the dome was inlaid with thousands of pearls and gems, which were also shining brightly. Ji Tianqing stood in the main hall and looked around calmly. He saw that the spacious main hall was at least 100 feet wide, supported by 6 red pillars with gold. Ancient statues were placed in the corners, and a 30-meter-tall bronze cauldron stood in the middle of the main hall. The bronze cauldron's shape was ancient and strange. The body of the cauldron was hexagonal, with 6 ears and 6 legs. The body of the cauldron was carved with flying fire phoenixes. The strange thing was that the 6 legs of the cauldron were embedded in the ground, as if they were connected to the underground. The ground around the cauldron was not made of ordinary bricks, but of supreme-grade spiritual jade, which exuded a rich spiritual energy. Looks like this is the Burning Sky Cauldron. Ji Tianqing walked around the cauldron. After looking at it for a while, he left the main hall. He entered the side halls on both sides of the main hall and checked the study room, the alchemy room, the fire room, the storage room, and so on. After an hour, he had a clear understanding of the layout of the Burning Sky Palace. The entire Burning Sky Palace is built on the edge of a cliff, and behind it is a bottomless abyss. This Burning Sky Palace is a saint-level array, and the core is the Burning Sky Cauldron. Not only does the Burning Sky Cauldron need to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy, but it also needs to absorb the Earth Core's spiritual fire under the God-sealing mountain through the array. Ji Tianqing prepared for a moment, then waved his hand and released 2 streaks of dark golden spiritual energy into the Burning Sky Cauldron, trying to activate it. However, the spiritual energy he released was like a clay ox entering the sea, and there was no reaction. Previously, Hong Qingtian had said that there was a problem with the burning sky cauldron, and it had been out of use for more than 100 years. He continued to use different methods to inject spiritual energy into the burning sky cauldron, trying to activate the array of the cauldron. However, he tried more than 10 times, and all of them ended in failure. The fact had proven that Hong Qingtian was right. There's indeed a problem with the burning sky cauldron, and it is missing something at its core. However, where's the problem? Ji Tianxing calmed down and frowned as he observed the burning sky cauldron, thinking silently. A moment later, he flew above the cauldron and released his divine sense to envelop the entire burning sky cauldron, carefully analyzing it bit by bit. Time passed quietly. On the God-sealing mountain, the sun rose and the moon set. Day after day passed. The main hall of the burning sky palace had always been quiet, and it was illuminated by the gemstone lamps, making it impossible to distinguish between day and night. Ji Tianxing forgot about the passage of time and focused on inspecting the burning sky cauldron to find the problem. 3 days later, he found the crux of the problem, but he did not know what it was. Therefore, he meditated on the spot, and his primordial spirit entered the heavenly book pavilion to read the books about saint-level cauldrons. Within 2 days, he quickly read more than 10,000 ancient books and books. He already knew saint-level cauldrons and cauldrons like the back of his hand, and he had a thorough understanding of them. He compared the descriptions in dozens of ancient books, and after analyzing for a long time, he finally understood the problem with the burning sky cauldron and found a solution. He then entered the underground of the palace, found the earth fire array, and cast a spell to repair the array. But this was only the first step to repairing the burning sky cauldron. 2 days later, he sneaked into the underground of the God-sealing mountain and entered the geocentric rock formation hundreds of miles deep. The rock formation was filled with earth, fire, and magma, and it was extremely hot, and the terrain was also extremely complicated. He endured the pain of being roasted, gritted his teeth, and persevered. After 2 days, he finally repaired 6 array nodes. The array that supported the operation of the burning sky cauldron was finally repaired. There was only one last step. As long as he repaired the internal array of the burning sky cauldron, he could smoothly activate it. Ji Tianxing returned to the burning sky palace, entered the burning sky cauldron, and cast a spell to repair the array. Another day passed. On the evening of the 10th day, he finally repaired the array in the burning sky cauldron. At this point, the saint-level cauldron had finally returned to normal and could operate smoothly. Ji Tianxing had been busy for 10 days, and his primordial spirit was also quite tired. Chapter 1551. Early in the morning, the sun rose from the east. Warm sunlight shone on the peak of God-sealing mountain. Dozens of palaces were covered in golden light, appearing sacred and peaceful. In the west courtyard of Heaven's Saint Palace, Hong Qingtian flew to the roof and meditated as usual. He sat on the roof and faced the rising sun in the east, circulating his energy with his eyes closed. As he breathed, the clouds in the sky surged as he absorbed and refined the essence of the sun and moon. Early in the morning was the time when yin and yang intersected. The essence of the moon at night had yet to dissipate, but the essence of the sun in the day had already descended. This was the most suitable time for cultivation. Hong Qingtian meditated for an hour and refined the flowing clouds and morning glow in the sky. The peak of Mount God Bestowment became cloudless and clear. Vast and mighty essence of the sun and moon flowed in his body, nourishing the injuries of his primordial spirit. He slowly stopped and opened his eyes. However, when he saw the scene in the sky, he was stunned. The originally clear and bright sky was filled with the red glow of the sun for some reason. Why is there such a strange phenomenon? Is this some kind of omen? Hong Qingtian instantly frowned, and a look of worry flashed across his eyes. He looked up at the sky and stared at the direction of the red glow. He used the secret technique of Heaven's Secrets to analyze the great way of Heaven's Secrets. If the red glow was really some kind of omen, he had to deduce in advance whether the omen was auspicious or ominous. However, after he used the secret technique of Heaven's Secrets, he He could not deduce the result at all. He could not tell whether the omen was auspicious or ominous. This made him even more confused, and he became even more shocked and worried. What kind of omen is this? Why is it so mysterious? Even the secret technique of heaven expansion cannot deduce any clues. If it's an auspicious omen, it will definitely benefit millions of people. If it's an ominous omen, it will probably be a calamity that will destroy the world. At this thought, Hong Qingtian immediately flew down from the roof and walked out of the courtyard. He wanted to discuss this matter with the Great Guardian. However, just as he walked out of the courtyard, he saw more than 10 guards and maidservants in the garden. They were all looking at the sky and whispering to each other. Those guards and maidservants were all looking at the sky in the north, and their faces were filled with shock and astonishment. Heavens, what's with that soaring fire? Looking at the location of the fire, it seems to be at the northern edge. It seems to be the location of the Burning Sky Palace. I remember that many years ago, when the three protectors were refining pills in the Burning Heaven Palace, this kind of heavenly flame also appeared. I heard that the Burning Sky Palace has been closed for over 100 years. It seems that there is something wrong with the pill cauldron and it can't be activated. Why is it activated again now? Hong Qingtian was powerful, and his ears and eyes were sharp. Naturally, he heard the discussions of the guards. His body suddenly stiffened, and his feet froze on the spot. He slowly turned his head to look at the northern sky. When he saw clearly that the red clouds that filled the sky were indeed coming from the Burning Heaven Palace, he immediately understood. Ha! I didn't expect it to be the activation of the Burning Heaven Palace's array formation that caused the soaring flames to form clouds. This old man actually mistakenly thought that it was some sort of heaven and earth anomaly. I'm truly ashamed. A self-deprecating smile appeared on his face, and he felt a little embarrassed. However, he immediately reacted, and the smile on his face immediately turned into deep shock. No, the Burning Sky Palace has been idle for over 100 years, and the Burning Sky Cauldron can't be activated. How can it cause the soaring red clouds? Could it be that Ji Tianxing activated the Burning Sky Cauldron? This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. I personally checked the Burning Sky Cauldron. The array formation and the core of the pill cauldron are missing, and it can't be activated successfully. Thinking of this, Hong Qingtian's emotions were somewhat agitated, and his eyes sparkled. With Ji Tianxing's strength, it is impossible for him to repair the Burning Sky Cauldron. He must have asked the Great Protector for help. Only the Great Protector, who has the strength of a martial sage, can activate the Burning Sky Cauldron. No wonder Ji Tianxing did not appear for 10 consecutive days. It turns out that he really went to the Burning Sky Palace and is really going to start refining pills. This old man has to go and see what is going on. Hong Qingtian's heart was filled with shock and anticipation. He could not wait to leave the west courtyard and rush to the Burning Sky Palace in the north. At the same time, the entire God Bestowment Mountain was alarmed. Early in the morning, the young geniuses of the 6 nations saw the red clouds that covered the sky and illuminated the ground in a fiery red color. A few divine envoys, countless golden armored guards, and maidservants also saw the red clouds covering the sky. Countless people in the various palaces, plazas, gardens, and corridors were discussing this matter. Everyone looked at the sky in the north and saw the magnificent scene brought about by the red clouds as they discussed the reason for the appearance of the red clouds. Why would there be such a red clouds so early in the morning? Why is it so dazzling? The red clouds are at least tens of thousands of miles wide, right? It also contains a scorching fire aura. It seems to be the heavenly fire. Looking at the origin of the red clouds, it seems to be the Burning Sky Palace in the north. That's strange. Hasn't the Burning Sky Palace been idle for 100 years? I heard that the Burning Sky Palace is a sacred place for refining pills. However, 100 years ago, the pill cauldron was broken and it was never opened again. Could it be that someone repaired the Burning Sky Cauldron and reactivated it? It is said that the Burning Sky Cauldron is a sage-grade pill cauldron. Only martial sages can repair and use it. The Great Protector must have done it personally. The Great Protector has personally refined pills in the Burning Sky Palace? It must be a shocking sage pill. Let's go and take a look. It is our fortune to be able to see the Great Protector refine a sage pill. It will definitely benefit us for the rest of our lives. Similar conversations took place in the various palaces in God Bestowment Mountain. The young geniuses of the Six Nations, as well as some guards and maids who did not need to be on duty, rushed to the Burning Sky Palace. Even the divine envoys and Hong Qingtian were on their way to the Burning Sky Palace. After all, the Burning Sky Palace was a sacred place for refining pills. However, it was not a forbidden place. The disciples, guards, and maids were not prohibited from getting close to it. 100 years ago, when the Burning Sky Palace was still operating normally, the Great Protector would occasionally open the cauldron to refine pills. Whenever he refined pills, it was a grand event on God Bestowment Mountain that attracted many people to watch and learn from him. However, the materials needed to refine a sage pill were priceless and could not be easily gathered. The Great Protector would only refine pills once every 20 years. Ever since the Burning Sky Cauldron had a problem, he had not refined any more sage pills. Now, after 100 years, the Great Protector had finally opened the cauldron to refine pills again. Everyone was excited and filled with anticipation as they rushed to the Burning Sky Palace and gathered outside the palace gate. Even if they could not see the Great Protector's refining skills at a close distance, they would benefit greatly if they could absorb some of the sage pill spiritual chi outside the palace. In just half an hour, more than 100 people had gathered at the square outside the Burning Sky Palace. Chapter 1552. Many geniuses, guards, and maidservants gathered in groups of 3 to 5 on the square, whispering to each other as they discussed. Suddenly, someone saw Hong Qingtian hurriedly walking through the crowd toward the gate of the Burning Sky Palace. Some of the guards and maids who recognized him immediately let out a burst of exclamations and discussions. Isn't that the third guardian? Even he has been alerted? It really is the third guardian. Strange, the third guardian has already lived in seclusion in the Heaven Saint Palace for hundreds of years and rarely shows himself. Why is he here today? The third guardian? Is he the former martial saint expert, the previous great guardian? Yes, the former great guardian. Now he is the third guardian and has been guarding the Heaven Saint Palace. The third guardian has always been amiable and does not put on airs. Everyone calls him Elder Hong. Elder Hong has cultivated for many years, and his heart is as calm as still water. Why would he come to watch the show? Following the discussion, many guards, maidservants, and young geniuses respectfully greeted Hong Qingtian. Hong Qingtian quickly walked through the crowd and responded to their polite greetings with a smile and a nod. Under everyone's gazes, he walked to the gate of the Burning Sky Palace and stood there, saying loudly, "Great Guardian, Hong Qingtian requests an audience." The 100 or so people in the square had previously only guessed that the person refining pills in the Burning Sky Palace was the Great Guardian. Now that they heard Hong Qingtian's words, they were even more certain that the person refining pills was the Great Guardian. Everyone stared at the gate of the palace, waiting for the Great Guardian to appear. However, a dignified and loud voice sounded from the edge of the square. "Elder Hong, why are you looking for me?" Suddenly hearing this dignified voice, everyone turned their heads to look behind them. They saw a tall and sturdy old man in golden robes at the edge of the square, striding over. This person's hair and beard were all white, and his skin was bronze. His eyes were bright and deep, and his entire body emitted a domineering aura. There was no one present who did not recognize him. It was undoubtedly the Great Guardian. When Hong Qingtian saw the Great Guardian walking over, he was stunned on the spot. His eyes were full of shock. The young geniuses of the 6 states, the guards, and the maids all revealed puzzled expressions. Everyone thought that the Great Protector was refining pills in the Burning Heaven Palace, so they came to watch, hoping to get some of the Saint Pill's spirit chi. But now, Chief Protector was in the plaza and not in Burning Heaven Palace at all. Hong Qingtian came back to his senses and asked somewhat excitedly, "Chief Protector, why aren't you in the Burning Sky Palace?" Aren't you the one refining pills in the palace? The great guardian walked towards him and shook his head. Concoct pills? Wasn't the burning sky cauldron in the burning sky palace already broken and in use for 100 years? I was also alarmed by the sky, shrouding red clouds. That's why I rushed over to investigate. How? How is this possible? Could it really be him? Hong Chengtian was even more shocked. He felt that it was inconceivable, and his eyes shone brightly. The great guardian walked in front of him and asked doubtfully, Elder Hong, what's going on? Aren't you cultivating in the Heaven Saint Palace? Why are you here to watch the show? Hong Qingtian's eyes shone brightly as he looked at the great guardian and asked solemnly, Chief Protector, tell this old man the truth. Did Ji Tianxing ask you for help before? Ji Tianxing? Why did he ask me for help? The great guardian was even more confused and didn't understand. Hong Qingtian finally confirmed the guess in his heart. He exclaimed in shock, so it's really him. He actually repaired the broken burning sky cauldron and successfully opened the Saint Cauldron. The great guardian was confused and hurriedly asked, Elder Hong, what's going on? Don't keep me in suspense. Hong Chengtian took a few deep breaths and calmed his agitated and shocked heart. He explained solemnly, it's like this. After Ji Tianxing entered the Heaven Saint Palace, he met this old man on the Saint Altar. We chatted happily and felt like old friends at first sight. That kid saw that this old man was injured and offered to treat this old man's injuries. The great guardian was shocked and asked in disbelief, Is this true? Even I can't do anything about your injuries. Ji Tianxing is only at the primordial soul realm. How could he help you? Hong Qingtian looked at the palace door with a burning gaze and said emotionally, At first, this old man didn't believe it either. However, Ji Tianxing spoke with certainty and analyzed the situation thoroughly. Furthermore, he is well-versed in both ancient and modern times and has read a lot of books. He has talent in the way of medicine and actually found a treatment method. This old man helped him gather the ingredients for refining pills and told him that the burning sky cauldron is a saint-level pill cauldron and can help him refine pills. Hearing this, the great guardian understood everything. He was so shocked that his expression changed drastically. His eyes shone brightly as he exclaimed, So, Ji Tianxing repaired the burning sky cauldron and successfully opened the Saint Cauldron to refine pills? Hong Qingtian revealed a gratified and excited smile and nodded. From the looks of it, that's the case. The various geniuses in the square, as well as the many guards and maidservants, finally understood the reason behind this matter. Instantly, everyone was shocked to the extreme, and their expressions became very interesting. After being stunned for a long time, the crowd erupted into enthusiastic exclamations and discussions. Oh my God, I thought it was the Great Guardian refining pills. I didn't expect it to be Ji Tianxing. This is unbelievable. Ji Tianxing can actually repair a damaged Saint Cauldron? Isn't this too heaven-defying? I also have the strength of the primordial soul realm. However, I can't even open a Saint Cauldron in perfect condition, let alone repair it. Although Ji Tianxing is the son of God, he is too reckless. With his strength, he dares to touch the Saint Cauldron. Who will be responsible if an accident happens? Most people were shocked by Ji Tianxing's feat. Their hearts were in turmoil, and they found it hard to believe. However, there were a small number of people who felt that Ji Tianxing was purely trying to be in the limelight and had deliberately caused such a big commotion. In the end, he would definitely fail. Ji Tianxing was only at the primordial soul realm. If he could repair the Saint Cauldron and control it to refine a sacred pill, then the entire Shenwu continent would be filled with medical and alchemy sages. The great guardian frowned and pondered for a long time before revealing a serious expression. He shook his head repeatedly and said, Although this matter is shocking, this is too ridiculous. The burning sky cauldron is a sacred item that is related to the spirit veins of the entire Mount God Seal. Although Ji Tianxing is the son of God, he is only at the primordial soul realm. How can he control the Saint Cauldron and refine a sacred pill? This is simply fooling around. What if it leads to a disaster? Hong Chengtian nodded with a complicated expression and explained, I reminded Tianqing that he could ask you to help him repair the Saint Cauldron, but I didn't expect him to repair it himself without asking you. I'm also worried about him. If something goes wrong and he gets hurt, I won't be at ease. Chapter 1553. The Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian were both filled with worry and anxiety. However, the Great Guardian was worried that Ji Tianqing would rashly control the burning sky cauldron and destroy the spirit vein of Mount God bestowment, causing a great change and disaster. On the other hand, Hong Qingtian was worried about Ji Tianqing's safety. He was afraid that Ji Tianqing would be injured by the burning sky cauldron. After all, Ji Tianqing had entered the burning sky palace out of kindness to help him treat his injuries. If Ji Tianqing was harmed in any way, he would feel guilty. Hearing Hong Qingtian's words, the Great Guardian thought to himself, what kind of charm does Ji Tianqing have? He actually became friends with Elder Hong despite their age difference, and made Elder Hong so concerned about him. He did not waste any time and hurriedly waved his hand to form a seal and pressed it on the palace door. Suddenly, the palace door lit up with a five-colored brilliance and slowly opened to both sides. The moment the palace door opened, a majestic heavenly wind, earthly fire, and the five-element spirit chi gushed out from the main hall and poured onto the square like a flood. Before the geniuses, guards, and maidservants in the square could react, they were enveloped by the surging spirit chi of heaven and earth. The impact made them dizzy. Of course, no one was injured. Instead, they absorbed the majestic spirit chi of heaven and earth and benefited greatly. Hong Qingtian's expression changed. He hurriedly stepped into the main hall and looked into the hall with a worried gaze. The Great Guardian was also worried that something would happen to the sacred cauldron, so he followed closely into the main hall. When the two of them saw the scene in the middle of the main hall, they were stunned on the spot. Their faces were full of shock. They saw that the ground within a radius of 1,000 feet was lit up with a five-colored spirit chi brilliance. The extremely dense spirit chi formed thousands of intersecting veins on the ground, connecting to the burning sky cauldron in the middle. The originally simple and unadorned bronze cauldron was now emitting a five-colored brilliance. It was extremely dazzling. A crimson pillar of fire was rising from the mouth of the cauldron, constantly emitting terrifying heat waves. Ji Tianqing, who was dressed in a white robe, was sitting cross-legged under the burning sky cauldron. His back was facing the palace door, and his face was facing the cauldron. He was concentrating on channeling his arts to control the heaven and earth saint array and activate the power of the burning sky cauldron. The Great Guardian was a martial saint expert. Hong Qingtian had once been a martial saint as well as an alchemy grandmaster. With their insight and knowledge, they could naturally tell that there was nothing wrong with the burning sky cauldron. It was operating normally. Ji Tianqing was carrying out the first step of alchemy, which was to preheat the cauldron and prepare to throw in the alchemy materials. He actually repaired the burning sky cauldron. Oh my God, he is really going to start refining the holy elixir. The Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian looked at each other and exclaimed in disbelief. Both of them were martial sages. They were as steady as a rock and did not show their emotions on their faces. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of them, their expressions would not change. However, at this moment, both of their minds were in a mess. They were shocked by Ji Tianqing. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that an Essence Soul Realm warrior could accomplish such a miracle. The two of them regained their senses and continued to discuss excitedly. Back then, we personally checked the burning sky cauldron and could not find the root of the problem. We were unable to repair it. How did this kid do it? Yes, I always thought that only the Divine Master could solve the problem of the burning sky cauldron. I did not expect Ji Tianqing to create such a miracle. No wonder he was able to gain the Divine Master's favor and become the son of Oracle not long after he entered God's Sealing Mountain. I like him more and more now. Ji Tianqing has made a great contribution again. He has successfully repaired the burning sky cauldron. I have to carefully consider how to reward him. Just as the Great Guardian and Hong Qingtian were discussing in low voices, Ji Tianqing, who was focused on channeling his arts, suddenly spoke. Please go out and talk. Do not disturb me while I am refining the holy elixir." His tone was low and calm. It even contained a trace of unquestionable authority. If it were anyone else who dared to say such a thing, the Great Guardian would definitely be furious and severely punish them. However, this sentence was said by Ji Tianxing, so the Great Guardian was not angry. He said with a gratified expression, "Tianxing, don't worry about refining the elixir. If you need anything, just tell me. I will definitely help you." Hong Changtian also stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Tianxing, don't force yourself and don't hurt yourself. Regardless of whether you succeed or not, I'm already very happy that you have created such a miracle." Ji Tianxing still had his back facing them. As he activated the array, he said, "Thank you for your concern. Please wait outside the hall. Don't let anyone disturb me. The holy elixir will be refined in 7 days at most. We will talk again then." Hong Qingtian was shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief as he exclaimed, "What? 7 days? You only used 7 days to refine a holy elixir? How is this possible?" The Great Guardian was so shocked that his eyes widened. He felt as if he was listening to a heavenly book. Back then, Elder Hong personally performed the array. Even if he refined a lower-grade holy elixir, it would take him 2 months. Refining a holy elixir in 7 days? Are you kidding me? The Great Guardian did not explain. In the past, when he refined a holy elixir, it would usually take him 5 months or even half a year. For an alchemy grandmaster like Hong Qingtian to refine a holy elixir in 2 months was already very admirable. As for refining a holy elixir in 7 days, he could not believe it. He had never heard of it. He even doubted whether a holy elixir refined in 7 days could be eaten. Ji Tianxing still had his eyes closed. He focused on performing the array and did not say another word. The Great Guardian was filled with worry and doubt, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. On the other hand, Hong Qingtian was more relaxed. He was smiling, and he was very happy and excited. He patted the Great Guardian's shoulder and said telepathically, "Tianxing is the son of God. We have to believe in him and give him a chance to prove himself. Don't ask any more questions. Let's not disturb him. Let's go out first." Therefore, Hong Qingtian turned around and stepped through the palace door. He was the first to leave the main hall. The Great Guardian hesitated for a moment before leaving with him. When the two of them returned to the eaves, the palace door closed automatically. The many geniuses, guards, maids, and God's envoys in the square had already burst into an uproar. They were all exclaiming in amazement. When the palace door opened, everyone looked into the main hall and vaguely saw the situation in the hall. Everyone saw that there was a mysterious array operating on the ground of the main hall. The huge bronze cauldron was surrounded by flames and emitted a powerful spirit chi. Under the burning sky cauldron, a young man in a white robe was sitting upright. Looking at the back, there was no doubt that it was Ji Tianxing. The truth was that Ji Tianxing had repaired the burning sky cauldron and used it to refine the elixir. This explosive news shocked everyone. They were all dumbfounded and could not believe it. What the Great Guardian said next made everyone so excited and jealous that they almost went crazy. The Son of God, Ji Tianxing, has successfully repaired the burning sky cauldron that has been idle for 100 years. He is refining the holy elixir in the burning sky palace. For the next 7 days, the burning sky palace will be under martial law. No one is allowed to enter the main hall. Chapter 1554. The Great Guardian's tone was very dignified. This order was enough to prove that he valued and trusted Ji Tianxing. The young geniuses of various countries were envious of this, and their eyes were red with jealousy. In the crowd, Song Zhanyu stared at the gate of the palace with an ugly expression. His eyes were filled with worry. In just 3 months, the candidates of the God's disciple have not made much progress in their strength. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, has made a name for himself in the investiture God Mountain. He is highly regarded by the Great Guardian and the Third Guardian. Damn it, he has already moved into the heavily guarded Heaven's Saint Palace. It will be difficult for me to find a chance to snatch his burial of Heaven's sword. It had only been a month since he had received the secret order from the Holy Emperor of White Night. However, in this month, Ji Tianqing had suddenly become the child of God and received everyone's attention. He was also highly regarded by the Great Guardian. He did not even have the time to plot and plan. He had not even seen the burial of Heaven's sword. How could he not be extremely worried and anxious? Among the crowd of the Thousand Snow Empire, Jiang Ningxue stood alone. She stared at the gate of the palace, and there was a touch of melancholy on her beautiful face. Her eyes were a little complicated. She did not expect that in just a month, Ji Tianqing would become the child of God and even repair the Holy Cauldron, winning the favor of the Great Guardian and the Third Guardian. Although Ji Tianqing was only the fourth genius in name, his dazzling light had surpassed all the other geniuses. She recalled the disdain and resistance she had for Ji Tianqing when she deliberately approached Ji Tianqing. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt a little regretful. She could not help but laugh at herself. When Luli forced me to get close to him, I still resisted. When Ji Tianqing expressed his goodwill to me, I still looked down on him. Now that he has become the child of God, I wonder if he still has feelings for me? At the edge of the square, there was a 100-foot-tall palace. On the roof of the palace stood a carefree and unruly figure. This was a young man who didn't fit in with the crowd. He wore a set of gray linen clothes and a pair of black cloth shoes. His long hair was tied into a ponytail with a hemp rope. He stood on the roof against the wind and leaned against the cornice of the palace, holding a green wine gourd in his hand. There was no doubt that he was Qin Sangxiong, the #1 genius among the candidates for the God's disciple. Qin Sangxiong's sharp eyes stared at the gate of the burning sky palace on the other side of the square. From time to time, he would raise his head to take a sip of the strong liquor. His whole body exuded an increasingly strong fighting spirit. Originally, I thought that this batch of God's disciples were all trash and that no one would be able to compete with me. Now it seems that only he is worthy to be my opponent. He lifted his sleeve to wipe away the wine stain at the corner of his mouth as he muttered to himself. Seeing that the Great Guardian had left the square after giving the order, he also turned and flew down from the roof, returning to the Azure Dragon Palace. In the next few days, the peak of the God's Mountain was bustling with noise and excitement. The news that Ji Tianqing had repaired the Holy Cauldron and refined the divine elixir pill in the burning sky palace had spread like wildfire across the entire God's Mountain. Not only did the geniuses from the 6 nations know about this, but countless guards and maidservants were also discussing this matter. Everyone who heard the news could not believe their ears and thought that they had heard wrongly. After confirming the news, everyone was inexplicably shocked and felt that it was unbelievable. Only the top powers of the martial sage realm could control the Holy Cauldron and refine the divine class elixir pill. This was the common knowledge of the martial arts world. However, Ji Tianqing had broken this common knowledge and subverted everyone's understanding of him. Moreover, he had said that he would refine the divine elixir pill in 7 days, which was an unheard of miracle. Almost everyone felt that Ji Tianqing must have gone mad. He actually dared to speak such arrogant words. Everyone was skeptical and doubtful as they waited for the 7-day deadline to arrive. At that time, if Ji Tianqing failed to refine the divine elixir pill, he would be slapping himself in the face and everyone would spare no effort to mock him. The red clouds covered the sky and the sun and lasted for 7 days. Regardless of whether it was day or night, tidal God Mountain was shrouded in red light, and the heavens and earth were filled with thick spiritual fire and spiritual qi. The young geniuses from various nations, as well as many guards and maidservants, stood guard outside the burning sky palace and refused to leave. Powerful spiritual qi flowed out of the burning sky palace, causing the palace to be surrounded by 5 colors as though it was a fairyland. In these 7 days, many geniuses, guards, and maidservants had absorbed a large amount of spiritual qi from the heavens and earth, which was equivalent to 2 months of cultivation. Finally, 7 days passed. The 8th day arrived. At dawn, the heavens and earth were dark, and the surroundings of the burning sky palace were dyed dark red by the red clouds. The young geniuses from various nations gathered in the square outside the Burning Sky Palace and waited for the results to be announced. The great guardian, Hong Qingtian, and the 6 divine messengers also rushed to the Burning Sky Palace. Many young geniuses were whispering to each other. The 7-day deadline has passed, and it's already the 8th day. Why hasn't Ji Tianqing come out yet? Humph! Refining the divine elixir pill in 7 days? Do you really believe such arrogant words? I heard that even the great guardian and the 3rd guardian needed 2 months to refine the divine elixir pill. With Ji Tianqing's strength, I'm afraid he might not even be able to refine it in half a year. Yes, the red clouds above the Burning Sky Palace have not dissipated. This means that Ji Tianqing is still refining the elixir. Becoming a saint in 7 days has become a joke. I reckon that Ji Tianqing has already failed in refining the elixir. He's just afraid of losing face, so he's hiding in the Burning Sky Palace and refuses to come out. He. Let's wait here and see how he's going to clean up after his boasting. While everyone was discussing, the great guardian, Hong Qingtian, and the 6 divine messengers were also discussing secretly through voice transmission. The great guardian looked at Hong Qingtian and asked, "Elder Hong, the 7-day deadline is almost over. What do you think?" Hong Qingtian stroked his beard and said firmly, "Logic tells me that with Tianqing's strength, it's impossible for him to refine the divine elixir pill in 7 days. But I don't know why, but I feel that this man is extraordinary. He will definitely be a true dragon that soars in the 9 heavens in the future. Maybe he can really create a miracle." The great guardian nodded slightly and said with a complicated expression, "Elder Hong, you've served the divine master for your whole life. Your loyalty is unparalleled. We all hope for a miracle to heal your injuries. Although it's too unrealistic to expect Tianqing to refine the divine elixir pill in 7 days. But I still have a glimmer of hope in my heart. Maybe he can bring us a surprise." Lin Daoi and the divine messengers were also discussing secretly. However, other than Lin Daoi, who had some confidence in Ji Tianqing, the other 5 divine messengers shook their heads secretly and did not have much hope. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The sky was about to brighten, and a red light appeared in the eastern horizon. The sun was about to rise. At this moment, flames suddenly surged out of the Burning Sky Palace. They turned into 3 fire dragons that were thousands of feet tall and rushed into the sky.